Now call to order this Friendswood City Council meeting for June 3rd, 2024, and announce we have a quorum. Tonight's invocation will be led by Chaplain Mo Mays of the Friendswood Police Department. Chaplain.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, I'd like to take a moment to share one of our service losses this past week. And retired Friendswood Detective William Keith Steele passed away on May 24th, 2024. Keith Steele was hired in 1968 as the very first patrol officer in Friendswood, Texas. Thought this was acknowledgeable. Keith was an auxiliary police officer prior to that, and retired from PD, Friendswood PD, in July 31st, 2001. And just wanted to acknowledge he was a five-star award recipient during the year 2000 here, but wanted to share that with the public today. Let's pray together. Father, we thank you for this opportunity to come before you. Father, we lift these Keith family up to you, Father, this detective that served so many years here in Friendswood. Father, we just pray that you would comfort his family in this time of loss. Father, be with the Friendswood family as they are suffering a loss also, Father, that they miss a good friend and colleague. Father, just comfort them in that. And be with those that are meeting here this evening, our mayor and council, and give them the wisdom to speak. And Father, we just pray for calmness and in the spirits here, and Father, just that we'd be about the business of the city here in a great way. And Father, we just ask your blessing over this town. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honoring the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thanks, Mo. Okay, item 4 is council comments and reports. I'd just like to mention that we had an outstanding Memorial Day event here last Monday. I think it was one of the best ones I've attended. It was really well attended. A lot of people came in, and we had an outstanding speaker, one of our own, John Sasson, who served in the Marine Corps in Afghanistan, and he addressed us in really moving stories. So if you weren't there, you missed a good one. So that's all I got.
I had a couple of
Councilmember
things.
Branson.
First, I was going to welcome Councilmember John Elliser, but I guess we already scared him off. No, I think he's running late. But I too really enjoyed the Memorial Day celebration, and John did an excellent job. So thank you, Sasson family. And also, we've been receiving lots and lots of great comments about the hero banners. So thank you for bringing that to Friendswood. I know the Sasson family is responsible for that as well. So thank you for that. And I want to thank FDFA and the city of Friendswood for helping make that a reality, the banners and the hanging of the banners. So thank y'all. That was a great effort. Mayor attended, and so did Hill, and somebody else came. I'm already good. Heather. We had a big old check that we accepted at HGAC this past week. It was $4.6 million for groundwater storage tanks from the GLO. So very, very excited about that. And a lot of hard work went into getting that grant money, and I just wanted to say thank you. And then lastly, come to our July meeting, you'll see a few things tonight on the agenda, but come our July meeting is when we kind of re-up all of our volunteer organizations, committees, boards, commissions, and things. And if there's anyone here, and there's a lot of you here, so thank you for coming this evening, please get an application in. We'd love to get you involved in the city. And that's it, Mayor.
Councilmember Hanks.
First off, thank you, Mo, for mentioning Officer Steele and his service to our community, and our heartfelt condolences to his family. And I have to ditto what the mayor and Councilman Branson said about our Memorial Day service and our speaker, and it's always great took a granddaughter with me this time that had never been, who was 7, and she was impressed and had lots of questions about people that serve in the service and why we honor them. And then started noticing all the banners on along 518, and I've had several calls about those. People that want to have a loved one, a family member, or themselves to get a banner, the next round of banners. And so that is awesome. That is just great. And so thank you for all the work that went into that. I often talk about the volunteers that are needed in this city. And so luckily I have the opportunity to serve as liaison to the Keep Friendswood Beautiful. And I don't want to steal any thunder for anything that will be coming out, but they are always hard at work to do things for our community. They write grants, they get lots of money that goes to beautify entrances to some of our subdivisions or the Esplanades, the park entrance. There will be lots of things, and they have a new surprise that they will unveil shortly that I think everyone in the town will like. And there are lots of volunteers on that committee, hard-working volunteers. And then the last thing, I'm also the liaison to the library board. And again, that's another group of volunteers, along with the staff members at the library board, who have been putting on a gala for the last few years to raise money for various things. We've had 3 people graduate. One of the programs that the library does is to provide a GED type diploma for people who have not had that, maybe recent immigrants or people who just chose not to finish their schooling in the normal pathway. And so there are so many different things at the library. I've had a great pleasure. It's been my pleasure to serve as the liaison this past year. And the gala will be coming up next March, and I will give you more information as that gets closer. Thank you.
Thank you.
All
Councilmember
right.
Griffon.
Yeah, Mayor, the memorial service is one of my most favorite ceremonies that Friendswood puts on. I was in Paris and France, and I wasn't able to attend, and I surely wished I could have because I really do enjoy that. I just have briefly that the Texas Water Development Board had a public meeting last Thursday on May the 30th. They presented the draft 2024 state flood plan, and it's quite extensive. That'll be sent to Washington, D.C., and if you would like to go online and see that, just go on TWDB website and you can review it. And there'll be public comments being held about the draft flood plan, statewide draft flood plan, through June the 17th. And they also sent me a draft template that I showed you a little earlier, and I'll email that to you, and then maybe we can all send a letter up to Washington and maybe get some funds federally. So
We'll do it.
that's all I have.
Okay,
Councilmember Matranga. Mayor Pro Tem Matranga.
there you go. I'm going to add to, I mean, obviously everybody's been talking about the Memorial Day event, but it was very, very special. And if you get a chance to come next year, I certainly recommend it. I'm also going to talk about the banners, but I want to just really a big shout out to the banner team. Some of the members are here tonight, and I wanted to thank them and the city staff for their efforts to get those banners out ahead of the Memorial Day. And I think we're going to have a presentation by that part of that team later, so I don't want to steal any of their thunder, and I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you. Councilmember Aaronworth. All right. Moving on then. Item 5, public comment. In order to comply with the provisions of the Texas Open Meetings Act, the City Council may not deliberate any item not listed on the agenda. As such, City Council will listen to public comment and may 1, refer the item to city management for further action, or 2, direct staff to the placement of said item on a future agenda. During public comment, public shall comply with rules of decorum. We have a few people signed up here. Catherine Hale.
Once again, and once again I wrote notes. First of all, I want to say I'm Catherine Hale, live at 902 Applewood, and I am not just the fussy grandma who lives on Applewood who's worried about her grandbabies crossing the road to get to the park and the pool. I'm also, as you talked about, I volunteered and served on the PTO, the Booster Club president. I was past president of Wilderness Trails HOA. I was the liaison to Brittany Bay Thoroughfare Committee. So I've been doing this a long time. I'm also the grandma who found out from the Federal Transportation Study about cut-through traffic, about mobile sites that now direct traffic off busy thoroughfares and onto neighborhood streets. Waze does this now. About how that leads to dramatic increases in accidents and pedestrian deaths. I'm that grandma who was going to stay in my home till I found out from National Association of Realtors that cut-through traffic can decrease the value of my home up to 20%. Maybe I should have sold it last year when I had a really nice view. I also am that grandma who has questions. And one of my questions is, didn't we vote on this? And didn't we say no? Why don't we see a drainage plan on one of the subdivision's property? There's a lot of water being pumped out of there, and we hear about hundreds of truckloads of dirt being brought in that will build up that property. Our neighborhood did not flood, so we're really worried about anything changing over there. When it comes to access, will the Karen property at the north part of this tier's property be using Castlewood too, or will they link to Falling Leaf instead? And then I know later on you're going to talk about Tirzas, which I really don't understand that. Well, I've read and read and read. I don't understand why, like some of you have connections, family connections to local developers who did it the old-fashioned way. So I'm not sure why we're doing this. We have been told it has to deal with infrastructure and roads and water lines, and we're fine. We did not want roads. That's why we live in wilderness trails back there. This is for the south side of Friendswood. So, lastly, I want to say this. My granddaughter's supposed to be here tonight, and I told her if she was here, we were supposed to babysit her, that she was going to go to a city council meeting, which she was just fine with going to. She asked if it had anything to do with the property behind her house, and I said, no. So she wanted to talk about that property, and I said that was Mr. Thomas's property. He can do whatever he wants. He owns that property. That's his neighborhood. This is about the road next to my house, to our house, that they want to allow those people from other neighborhoods through ours. She said, next to our pool, next to our park. Do any of those people you're going to talk to actually live there, live here? And I said, nope, nobody does. And she said, I'm supposed to tell you. She said, then tell them no. This is our neighborhood. And she's right. This is Wilderness Trail neighborhood. This is our neighborhood. Please, no cut-throughs. Make a gate, make an emergency gate like you're going to do for one of the other neighborhoods. And if you won't listen to facts, studies, or even fussy grandmas, please listen to even a fussier 9-year-old. And trust me, you don't want her up here. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Please. We got a lot of stuff to get through, please. Tom Christ.
So I moved to West Castlewood 48 years ago. Probably longer than anyone in this room. At that time, West Castlewood, between Sunset and Greenbrier, was a blacktop road. Swale ditch on each side that was easy to mow. The only thing on the north side of Castlewood was my house and my next door neighbor, John Amador. The only thing on the south side was the Doc Jones Ranch. All the current houses between Castlewood and FM 528 were not there. All the houses west of Greenbrier were not there. Somewhere in the 80s, the decision was made to pave West Castlewood, widen the Sunset, and replace the Coward Creek Low Water Bridge. Sounded good. Concrete street, replaced the hollowed out train car bridge. But the contractor that set the bridge set it at the wrong elevation. So all of our swale ditches became a 4-foot ditch along Castlewood. When we complained to the city about the 4-foot ditch, we were told, don't worry about it, the city won't keep it mowed. The city hadn't mowed it one time. And the only way you can maintain that ditch is with a weed eater. After the streets were paved, the city decided to make Falling Leaf, Greenbrier, and West Castlewood one way for the high school traffic. West Castlewood was one way between Greenbrier and Sunset. This was outstanding. it became a 2-lane strip that we all called Friendswood Drag Strip. The traffic there and the speed was terrible. I actually had a kid one day while I was mowing the grass come speeding down Castlewood, lost control of his motorcycle, jumped the ditch, and wound up in my front yard. So like I said, some ideas are good, some are not. Currently, there's still a lot of speeding on West Castlewood between Greenbrier and Sunset. At one time, there was a proposal to put 1 or maybe 2 speed bumps on West Castlewood. There is one on Castlewood when you go into the subdivision. Maybe we need to revisit that proposal. And I'm going to end this with that someone once said, and if you don't know who it is, you can look it up. The government of the people, by the people, for the people. Friendswood voted this down, and you people need to respect the fact that Friendswood voted this down. Thank you.
Thank you. Jason Jones. Jason Jones.
Good evening, everybody. So when I thought about tonight, the question I asked myself is, what is Friendswood? And I've always thought of Ronald Reagan's words when he quotes John Winthrop, city on a hill, a shining city on a hill. It's a way to describe something you can't really flesh out, but you know because you're a part of it. And when you look at Friendswood, unless you're GCAD, and they have a very specific formula for how much it's worth to live in Friendswood, and we've all felt that pain this past month. We have an excellent school system. We have very successful students who succeed in academic and athletic endeavors. We're also a very green city. We have beautiful trees. It's right there on the emblem. So then what I thought about was legacy. For some council members, this is your first term. For some, you're plowing through the middle, and for some of you, this is your last go-round. So legacy. How this vote and future votes will go will determine that for each of you. And when you look at the emblem, will it still be that tree? Or will it be a bulldozer pushing that tree right over? I do not have an issue with development. I do not have an issue with progress. But as elected officials, we all have a responsibility and a duty of care to the history of our city, the future of our city, and its residents. And I would just like for people to consider that as they move forward. What do you want this council's legacy to be, your individual legacies moving forward? Thank you.
Thank you. Deborah Winters Cheney.
Hello again, Deborah Winters Cheney, 1008 Applewood Drive. To begin with, I know tonight's meeting is going to have a lot to do with the TERS, and I might be one of the only people who have read on the agenda, you know, the documents about the TERS, and I still don't understand it very well. And I wish we would have had a meeting, an open meeting, to try to explain what that means, what could go wrong with the tours, and if it did go wrong, how does that affect the residents in Friendswood? But basically, I'm here tonight to reiterate that I am hopeful that you can come up with, please, another solution to rather than opening up Castlewood. Our neighborhood, the sidewalks are not level. The city can't, you know, fix all the sidewalks throughout our neighborhood because there's sidewalks everywhere that have problems and they don't have time to fix all of ours. So our children ride their bikes and their three-wheelers and their little go-karts in the street. We have joggers in the street, bicycle riders in the street, people who walk their dogs, walk them in the street because the sidewalk is, you know, in a lot of different places up and down. and, you know, can cause trips and falls and things like that. So if you open up Castlewood and the traffic, people are not going to be able to do that. And it's going to cause, you know, safety issues. I'm very concerned as a president of the HOA currently. I'm very concerned about the safety issues. I do not want our pool to be opened up. We have kids all summer coming and going. They're not with their parents. Yeah, they come with their siblings. There's 2 lifeguards at the pool at all times. So, you know, kids are back and forth to that pool all the time. And I don't want Castlewood opened up to a 4-lane parkway. I don't know if everybody, Judge, I don't know if you've ever driven down Castlewood as a for instance, but if you haven't driven down Castlewood, please try to. It's a narrow street. And if one person is parked on the street, essentially people wait. If people are coming from 2 different directions, they wait till one goes and then the other one will go, because there's really not enough room. So I ask you to please come up with another plan. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Item 6, special recognition and acknowledgements. Present the City of Friendswood 5-Star Spirit Award for the first quarter of 2024 to Mitchell Blanchard and Jason Heritos, both of which are laborers in the Parks and Recreation Department. City Manager Murad Kabiri.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I do once a quarter, I get the honor and the privilege of recognizing outstanding employees that have been voted on as the employee of the quarter, so to speak, by their peers and by residents within the community. We have 2 this evening in our Parks Department, Jason and Mitchell. Can y'all come up here? So these 2. These 2 fine, outstanding gentlemen were nominated by a resident who brought their children fishing at Lake Friendswood. The father was with his daughter and his son, and they attempted to fish, and after no luck, after a few, I want to say an hour or 2, they started to pack up to leave. Just at that time, Mitchell walked out onto the dock, threw a line in the water, got a bite, and handed it to the little boy. And then shortly thereafter, Jason did the same with the daughter, and they ended up limiting out a fish. Both kids were ecstatic about their experience, and the father took a moment to write a thank you note, endearing fishing to them in the future. So we thank you for taking the extra time and making their day. You want to recognize your family? Yeah.
How do I do that? This way?
Yes.
That way?
Well, both ways.
Okay. Wait a minute.
Hey,
All right.
Katie.
So there's my sister.
I think she's one more than you, though, so you need to.
Yeah, I need to catch up. So, sister, dad, raise your hand. Dad, brother, my wife, whose birthday it is today. My daughter, Lacey. My niece, Carly. My sister-in-law, Erin. And mom is.
There is she.
Where's mom? They're over there. So,
Where do you want us?
Right over here.
Jason, you want to introduce your family?
Oh, go ahead, sorry.
oh, I'm sorry. My wife's here. We were going to bring our Frenchie, but we went through the outing.
All right. All right, 3, 2, 1. All right, and then if you want to do pictures with your family in the lobby.
Thanks for being here, Katie. Katie's still on maternity leave, right?
She is. So she was not here for work.
Not here, not
For
working.
her brother. She's here
Yes.
for her
Very,
brother.
very cool.
For the camera.
All right, item 7, committees or special reports. 7A, received the Library Advisory Board's annual report presented by Diane Freeman, Library Advisory Chair. Hello, Diane.
Again. Oh, let's see, just a moment. Okay. Good evening. Nice to see you all. I'm going to talk about 3 different kinds of highlights, one for the board, one for the Friends of the Library, and then the library itself. The board highlights, the board has supported the Friendswood Library in their vision to engage, educate, entertain, and empower every family member and the businesses in the community to the best that they can. The whole point of this is that the library needs to be a vibrant location where everyone feels comfortable of all ages. The board has supported all the efforts to achieve and promote the library's mission through discussion of policies, long-term goals, services, and programs. The board has supported the Friends of the Library's fundraising events through the galas and the book sales. It has also assisted the library in meeting the goals of the 2023 to 2028 long-range strategic plan. And also the board served on the Galveston County Library System Advisory Council and recently passed or approved the Galveston County Library System budget. Now this one is sort of highlighting what Trish talked earlier. The board is very involved with the Gale Excel High School Completion Program, which she mentioned, or you mentioned. The library has helped 3 young adults attain their high school diploma, and this is an example of one of the times that the graduation ceremony happened. It was in the community room of the library, very, very large, and the number of this young man's friends and family just almost completely took over the whole room. So they were proud, and we were proud to support them. And I thank for those of you all who have come to not only this one, but also other ones too, and look for you to help out in the future. There are 2 now in the program, and we expect them, of course, to graduate. The Friends of the Library are currently planning the Camelot-themed gala, which is scheduled for March of next year. As a result of the monies that have been raised for the previous gala, for the previous one, and also the book sales, the Friends of the Library have purchased new makerspace equipment, such as sublimation printer, astronomy equipment, and also new mobile shelving. The Friends also have provided scholarships for this Gale Excel High School program, and something new happened this year in which the Friends also awarded a scholarship to 2 students in the Friendswood High School. Okay, let's see. With respect to the library, I've been up here year by year, and this is usually the first bullet that comes up, in that this library that I'm affiliated with is so fantastic, and they have won again, the 10th time, the achievement. I can't remember what the TMLDA, Matt's gonna have to help me out there, but it's the Achievement of Library Excellence Award. The library has hosted a host of different programs, and these are some of them. The summer reading program that's just starting up, and I think you're gonna hear more about that later on. And then the health fair, the ZakiCon anime event, the craft care, and poetry events that have been happening. And with respect to the poetry ones, there are local poets and also international poets that support this effort. The library staff has provided outreach services to schools, daycares, retirement committees, and homebound residents. And how the staff gets around is using our brand new, well, not now new, but our outreach van that we were able to get because of the gala in the past. And finally, The Friendswood Library has added new STEM technology classes such as 3D and sublimation printing, robotics, STEAM night programs, and database training. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane.
Well done.
All right, item 7B, receive an update regarding a Hometown Heroes Veteran Street Banner Program presented by Meg Crowley and Richard Sasson.
Thank you. I'm Meg Crowley, president of FDFA, and I'm with Richard Sasson, who is our committee chair and brought the concept to Friendswood. We just want to come back around. I don't want to be repetitive, but we want to say thank you to City Council and the city for supporting the program, to Council Member Joe Matranga, who's just been a little driving force for our banner program, and also to James Toney and his staff, his incredible staff, their help with the banner program. As you know, this is our first year, and we had 28 banners, which exceeded our expectations. Every year, the applications for submissions will open from March 1st till April 15th, and then we will roll out by Memorial Day with new banners, and they'll stay up for approximately 2 years. And then once they are retired, they will be given back to whoever did the application. Again, we are so appreciative for this program. It's been a wonderful program for FDFA to be involved in and to spearhead for the city. And any questions or anything?
Thank you so much.
I got one.
Positive feedback.
Since we got so many people reaching out about ways to be on it, Murad, can we maybe do a job, like as the city, can we maybe promote this so people know where to sign up? That some people, I know you probably, I don't, Meg, you probably dealt with a lot of questions.
Well, we could
people
all,
say
we
this.
all, if we, could, we're on the city, link it back to, it's housed under the FDFA
Collaborate,
website.
yeah.
And so everything, it costs $100 to do it, which is zero cost of zero profit to FDFA.
Sure.
We could always link it. But we knew starting out that would be the communication hurdle.
Yeah.
And that's why the 28 really exceeded our
Y'all
expectations.
advertised it like 3-4 times, so people.
We try. I mean,
Yeah,
it's getting the word out. So we've had a lot of questions since
Since they saw
and then it's finding sometimes the pictures are so old, or some people don't even have the picture. So it was just a great program.
Yeah, it
We were
was
so
good.
appreciative of the city.
And we can assist with the advertising and communication.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Meg. Thanks, Richard. Okay, item 8, work session topics. 8A, receive and discuss a presentation regarding the City of Friendswood multi-year financial plan presented by Rhonda Blaskus, our finance director. Welcome, Rhonda.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This evening, I'm going to present to you the city's multi-year financial plan for fiscal years 2025 through 2029. The multi-year financial plan is a planning tool that projects the general fund's revenues and expenditures over a 5-year period using historical and trend analysis. Year 1 of the plan is the basis for the city's upcoming FY25 budget. However, keep in mind that the information is very preliminary, and projections will be adjusted as we begin going through the annual budget process and as more information becomes available. We will start by looking at our revenue planning assumptions in the plan. Based on preliminary values we received from Galveston Central Appraisal District, we are projecting an increase in values of 6%. This includes residential as well as commercial, and then the estimate for any new home construction. Most other revenue sources in the plan we're projecting to increase at 2%.
Related to those preliminary projections, real quick, a number of you, everybody within the community, received their new appraisal value from the appraisal district a few months ago. Please note there are 2 figures on those appraisals, one that estimates the fair market value of the home, and then the other that estimates the 10% cap that exists on residential properties. So of the 6% that we're evaluating right now, we don't know the full impact. Obviously, a number of homes will be under protest when they receive those values. So later on this summer, when we get certified values, we'll get better information.
From the revenue planning assumptions, the FY25 general fund revenue is projected to be $41.2 million. Property taxes are the city's largest source of revenue in the general fund. To calculate the $22.6 million in revenue, a tax rate of 52.13 cents was used. This does not include property taxes for debt service. That is accounted for in a separate fund. Sales tax are the next largest source of general fund revenue. This does not include the sales tax revenue generated for streets improvement or the Friendswood Downtown Economic Development Corporation. Franchise taxes are 5% of total revenues generated from utilities. And then our non-tax revenue is about 17% of the total and includes fines, building permits, parks and recreation fees, interest earnings, as well as the interfund transfer from the water and sewer fund. As previously mentioned, property tax revenue is our main source of general fund revenue. This slide provides the detail on why a tax rate increase is anticipated in FY 2025. Historically, the city has adopted the no new revenue rate. In FY 24, the tax rate that was adopted was a little above 50 cents, which was well below the voter approval rate, including any unused increment. The city has approximately 5.3 cents in unused increment from staying well below the maximum allowed without triggering an election. As previously discussed with council and with council's direction, the EMS will become a department of the city in FY25. The cost to do so is approximately 1.3 cents on the tax rate. Increases in supplies, services, and maintenance costs are estimated to increase 5%, while personnel costs are projected to increase 4%. Also built into the plan is $500,000 to be used for deferred maintenance items. This will also add almost a penny to the tax rate. Forces at work are required expenditures that are beyond the control of city staff, and these are estimated right now at $1.2 million, and these are funded in the plan. A list of the current forces at work will be provided in a future slide. Decision packages totaling $1.8 million have been submitted by city departments, and these are not included in the plan. This transitions us into our discussion of expenditures and the assumptions included in the multi-year financial plan. We're projecting that there will be a 4% increase each year for wages and benefits. This 4% takes into consideration the projected salary adjustment for the citywide compensation study that's currently being done. Non-personnel expenses included in the plan are projected to grow about 5% each year based on historical trends. Based on the preliminary assumptions, the FY25 preliminary expenditures are estimated at $41.2 million, with personnel costs being the largest part of the city's budget at 66% of total expenditures. On this slide, we show the EMS onboarding being broken out separate from the other FAWs, and is shown net of the reduction in the FVFD contract, the elimination of the EMS contract, and the revenues from EMS billing. On the next slide, this is a list of the current forces at work, totaling $1.2 million, which is shown net of other of outside revenue sources. These are funded in the plan. And I won't read through each of those. I'll just give you a minute to look at them.
So a number of these, as Rhonda mentioned, were decided either over a year ago or several months ago, depending on contracts approved by council. So they're included in the base budget for the purposes of this analysis.
Okay. On the next, this is our fun graph that I think everybody just loves. It's pretty busy, but the blue bar represents our revenues. The red is our expenditures. The green bar represents our 90-day reserve. The the blue trend line represents our capital, what happens to our capital improvement reserve if we fund only our FAWs in the plan. And then the purple line shows what happens to our capital improvement reserve if we fund both the forces at work as well as the decision packages.
So a few slides back, Rhonda had indicated the impact of multiple years adopting the no new revenue rate. So for a period of 15 years, 10 of those years we adopted the no new revenue rate or less. The years in which we didn't adopt the no new revenue rate, we increased taxes. We had issued debt that the voters approved in terms of bond projects. As you can tell by the slide, the culmination or the impact of doing that over a number of years showed a depreciation of that light blue line. So if you look on the left side of the screen, the light blue line represents the funds available above the 90-day emergency. It was nearly $7 million back in 2020. Over the course of the last 4 years, that got depleted to where we're a little over $1 million. In reality, we're about $400,000 over the 90-day reserve, but we're awaiting reimbursement from the state and the feds on some grant funds that we had advanced. So part of the upcoming budget cycle, I would like council to take into consideration the potential for a deferred maintenance line item, which was mentioned in Rhonda's presentation, as well as potentially a line item for advancing grant funds. So we mentioned Councilmember Branson and the mayor going to HGAC, receiving a $4.6 million grant. We are thrilled, tickled pink that we got that grant. But over the course of the next 3 years, we're going to have to pay $4.6 million up front and await reimbursement. That's the way the grant works. Though great for the city, we may have a situation of cash flow problems if we continue to apply for those type of grants.
By the way, last time I saw Sally had that check. So.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, to summarize the work session, based on preliminary planning assumptions in the multi-year financial plan, the city's operating reserve is maintained in FY25. We are anticipating a tax rate increase as well. And in future years, the tax rate used in the plan was the voter approval rate as well. Forces at work and employee merit were funded, but no decision packages were funded in the plan for any of the 5 years.
So much like past years, as we get further information, this figure will get refined further and further. This is simply painting the information based upon what we know today.
I think it's important to point out that we do include employee merit, but at the same, and we've chosen this number, 4% I see, but we're also at the same time doing a study to find
Correct.
out how our compensation sort of stacks up. So hopefully we'll come back and the answer will not be a bigger number than 4%. We need to make sure that we're paying our people so we don't have quality people heading out the door.
As you've seen within the last 18 months, we've lost 5 key employees, anywhere from a $40,000 a year pay raise to an $80,000 a year pay raise.
So our next steps, we plan to deliver the proposed budget to council as required by city charter on August the 1st. We'll hold a work session at the August city council meeting. And then as required by local government code and the city charter, public hearings will be held on both the proposed budget and the proposed tax rate. And we anticipate the budget and the tax rate adoption at the September council meeting. And as always, council's input and direction is always welcomed and needed.
I say so.
Thanks, Rhonda. Appreciate it.
Questions?
Don't see any.
I do. I want to say something.
Oh,
It's
sorry.
okay. It's fine. So thank you very much. I know this is the first time you've presented it, and it will be refined quite a bit as we've experienced over the last several years. But I want to commend you and hope that this line item stays for deferred maintenance. You know, I've been a proponent of that for years, that we need to account for the things that when we adopted the no new revenue rate, and we put off some of the deferred maintenance. And so I'm really glad that is part of the budget as a line item. So I like that. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Moving on, item 8B, receive and discuss an update regarding the City of Friendswood's utility rates, presented by Jason Gray, VP and Managing Principal, Wildan Financial Services. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Thank you for taking some time tonight to talk about your utility rates. We've got a bunch of information in your packet. I know there's a lot of numbers that you're being presented with tonight. My plan is to keep this presentation relatively short, recognizing the breadth of your meeting tonight, and then not have any action tonight, but come back at a later date, have some additional discussion and take action then. Be happy to take any questions, of course, at any time during the presentation or after, but again, I'm going to run through this fairly quickly tonight. So again, my name is Jason Gray. I'm a Vice President with Wildan Financial Services. We do rate studies, utility rate studies, and other financial work for municipalities across the country. I office in Plano, Texas. We've done about 300 of these types of studies within Texas for utility rate programs across the state. We've done somewhere around 1,600 nationwide. Just a quick rundown of our agenda for tonight of this presentation. We've got 5 different areas. And we're going to talk a little bit about background on rates, talk about your customers and volumes, current and forecast cost of service, which is kind of a technical industry term for what it costs to do the business that you do. And I want to bring that up as well from the perspective of these are considered business type activities. That's how it shows in your audit. That's generally speaking how it shows throughout the governmental finance world. These are services that you provide directly to consumers. It's a retail type operation. And the costs that you experience as part of the cost of service is what we use in order to base our recommendations for rates. We have initial rate plan scenarios, and then we'll do a quick summary. So first, background on rates. We always think it's important to recognize that average utilities have been increasing their rates at about 5 to 6% per year. That's actually information that's a little bit old due to the increased pace of capital improvement project costs. Quite frankly, we're seeing that number tick up. We're generally seeing right now closer to 6, 7, 8% increases over the last couple of years. Historically, it's been about 5 to 6%. American Water Works Association, which is the national group that tracks these sorts of things, forecasts that water and wastewater rates will triple within the next 15 years. The cost of treating both water and wastewater and conveying both of those products to and from the households continues to go up at a frankly alarming pace, particularly from a capital improvement projects perspective, as I'm sure you've heard over and over again with the different CIP projects that you've had. One very important factor here is that about 30 to 40% of utilities charge rates that don't cover their costs. Sometimes it's deferred maintenance, like was talked about earlier in your general fund. That just doesn't get done in one particular year, but that is still a cost that you experience. Sometimes it is that your utility is not transferring any of its revenues back to the general fund, which supports the utility fund operations by the management of the utility, generally speaking, and the HR functions, the IT functions, those sorts of things. You do that, but it's something that a lot of utilities don't do and don't recognize the full cost of doing business. That's why we do these sorts of cost of service studies, is to ensure that your tax rate is not paying for utility fund operations. City of Houston and the Gulf Coast Authority water and wastewater wholesale contracts that you have continually increase in their costs for the same kind of reasons that we're talking with you tonight about your costs increasing. And rate adjustments, as you'll see with a couple of slides here, are largely due to factors that are essentially beyond your direct control. A lot of what makes up your rates are capital improvement projects and the cost with those, and the contract services that you have to buy raw water, or treated water, I should say, and to send your wastewater off to be treated. So I'm not going to talk about every number on this slide, but essentially this is your current rate plan. We talk about rate plans simply because there are a variety of different rates based on who the customer is, how they use the water, how much of it they use, those sorts of things. You have what I would consider to be a fairly typical type of rate plan for Texas, at least. You have a base charge, and then you also charge by volume. So the base charge, as I'm sure you know, but for the benefit of the audience as well, is a charge to have the meter there, have the water available to the meter regardless of whether you use it or not. There's a significant cost that goes into ensuring that there's availability of that water. And that's what the base charge is essentially designed to recover. The volume charge, then, you have a couple of different conservation tiers. We call this an inverted block tier structure, where the price goes up the more you use to try and encourage conservation. And so, again, I won't get into the details here, but you've got 4 different tiers at various rates. You do have 3,000 gallons included within your base charge as well. So if anybody uses less than 3,000 gallons, they get charged the base charge only, and then they only begin getting charged for the volume after that. Same kind of concept, generally speaking, on your wastewater, although you don't have tiered structures there because you're not conserving wastewater. Generally speaking, you've got a flat rate on volume, and then you've also got base charges for the sewer component as well. Outside city limit rates, which make up a fairly small component of your overall revenue, is 1.5 times your inside city limit rates. For that, and that's for a variety of reasons that we can get into if anybody's interested in the minutia of those kinds of things. Right now, you charge bi-monthly, as I'm sure you're aware. What we did is we took a 20,000 gallon bi-monthly charge. Most of your neighbors charge monthly, but we aggregated that into a bi-monthly approach and calculated out what their costs would be for 20,000 gallons of water and 10,000 gallons of wastewater. You can see here on this chart that you fall, generally speaking, on the relatively low end. You're about $40 less than the state average for that use profile, which is pretty close to your average use across the community. Katy is significantly lower. We don't do Katy's rates. I don't know what goes into that. I don't know if they're fully funding their cost of service, those kinds of things. And you'll see Pearland up on the high side at $296. Some of this is very dependent, particularly in communities that have this inverted block rate tier structure based on how much water actually gets used. And so, again, you can see you fall, generally speaking, about the middle, low side of the middle of the comparison communities that we have.
Just to add to Jason's comments on that slide, a number of those communities on the left-hand side are still on groundwater. So they're in Fort Bend County. They're not fully mandated to be at the 80% usage. So groundwater is much less expensive and limited treatment requirements.
Yep. That's absolutely right. The source of the water is one of the, I'd say, probably top 2 cost factors that goes into what it costs you to actually provide the service, about whether or not you're purchasing surface water or you're able to pump groundwater, and the cost differential between those two. Groundwater is significantly less expensive, generally speaking, today than surface water is. Over time, I don't know that that'll necessarily be the case. But all right, talking about customers and volumes. We've worked extensively with Katina and Rhonda and your staff to understand the dynamics of your community and your system. Right now, you've got about 14,400 water accounts and about 13,500 wastewater accounts. That is typical. Not only are there a couple of water customers on the residential side that don't have wastewater because they've got a septic system or whatever the case may be, you've also got a significant number of sprinkler accounts that don't have a wastewater account that goes along with it. And then oftentimes you'll see with commercial have multiple water accounts but only pay it through one wastewater account too. So the account trend, we're projecting, along with city staff, a 0.7% increase in the number of water accounts and wastewater accounts over time. So you can see here that would grow over the next 10 years from 14,400 up to a little over 15,000 within the next 10 years. There's a slightly higher percentage increase on the wastewater side simply because we're starting from a slightly lower base. And for every new water account, we're assuming there's going to be a wastewater account that goes along with that. We recognize that that may not be exact, but these assumptions, obviously, this is a straight line assumption. We know it's going to go up and down year to year based on development trends and the economy and those sorts of things as well. So we're just trying to give an overall look. From the build volume trend, and recognize that this is not what you purchase, but it's what you actually bill. Every water system has some differential between how much water you receive in and how much water you're able to bill due to hydrant flushing and leaks and firefighting and all sorts of things that don't get metered. but your build volume trend has gone up pretty significantly over the past couple of years. We're using a baseline assumption of about 1.87 billion gallons on an annual basis, and then escalating that up as your community grows. We're not expecting that your use profile changes in any significant way, that people will use more or less water per household, but as the community grows, the amount of gallons that goes through your system obviously will as well. Right now, residential use inside the city limits makes up over 3/4 of your total water use, which is probably not surprising to you. One of the things that we always like to point out when the slide comes out like this is that unfortunately, as costs increase, when you've got 3/4 of your customers that are residential, there is really no significant way to increase the revenues of the system without having it impact the residential in some way, shape, or form. A lot of communities would prefer to have commercial or industrial or some other customer class help offset the costs of those things, and that's understandable. Particularly, those are business write-offs and cost of doing business for those commercial entities. But when this large of a percentage of the water use is residential, again, there's just not a way to generate any significant revenues without having an impact on residential.
Mr. Gray, just
Yes,
for
sir.
the audience, because I know this is a question I ended up having to ask, but in reference to inside versus, and you're going to talk about outside, it's within the city limits. That's all that means.
Yes. Not inside use, not inside the home, correct. That is inside city limits as opposed to outside city limits, which you've got a fraction of customers, commercial outside and residential outside, don't even register. They're at technically 0%. They're somewhere in the rounding there that make up use. But yes, thank you for that clarification. Appreciate that. Average monthly use by what we call customer class. Residential inside, again, being the inside city limits, is just over 9,000, almost 9,300 gallons. This is average monthly use, so on your bi-monthly, that'd be about 19,000 or so. Residential outside customers, outside city limits, again, there's a very small number of them. They use a little bit higher level of water. Commercial inside city limits is about 34,000 per month. And you can see the others there. The sprinkler inside city limits, I'll mention, is 21,000 gallons on average. And so during the summer months, that's actually quite a bit more, obviously, and during the winter months, it's probably 0 or close to 0. All right, let's talk about cost of service a little bit. There's really 4 different components to your cost of service. You've got your operating expenses, obviously, capital outlays for both the sort of in budget capital projects as well as the debt funded capital project, capital improvement program, debt principal and interest for both current and future debt issuances, and then transfers. As Rhonda pointed out in the general fund side of your multi-year financial plan, we have used a variety of different assumptions as well. We have sort of we take your budget, go through it line by line, and we establish what we call an accelerator in our modeling for each and every line item. We have different accelerators for personnel and benefits than we do for chemicals. We have different line items for vehicle purchases and those kinds of things. And so based on the experience that we have and in communication with city staff, we've put different accelerators on each one of your line items, and these are just an example. Again, we'll have more detail available to you within the model should you want to dig in to see what any of those particular assumptions are. Again, I want to point out that there are certain expenses that do increase at a much faster pace than inflation for a variety of different reasons. Construction cost is one of those. There's a whole construction cost inflation index that's separate from the consumer price index. Those are a lot of the kinds of things that your utility faces, are the things that are at a heightened level of inflation over and above the general CPI that everybody experiences within the marketplace. The biggest impact on your rate plan are your wholesale providers, and then also the new debt service that will be required to fund your CIP. This chart gets a little bit busy, but I wanted to point out a couple of things in particular on the water side, which is on the left side of this chart. You've got about an $11.3 million annual budget. 23% of that goes to purchase water, and 37% of that goes to current debt service. And so that makes up a combined 40% of your overall cost. Your personnel services is just 15%. And so you look at that and say, how much do we have direct control over? Again, to my point earlier, It's just not a ton of operating expenses as a component of your overall costs. On the wastewater side, similar story. Your wastewater treatment plant, the sewer expenses there, the contract services are about 38% of your overall budget, with debt service being 15%. And you can see transfers make up another significant portion. One of the things that your community does, I'll applaud you on well, is recognize the full cost of providing the services and transfer that money back into the general fund appropriately. City of Houston water rate increases, again, this is something that we've projected, recognizing that the costs generally do and will continue to go up from the City of Houston. Right now, you've got a City of Houston rate per 1,000 gallons in 2024 of 93 cents, but your effective rate goes up to $1.24. And what we have is we have all components included in that: the cash calls, the debt service, those kinds of things that are associated with the City of Houston providing water to you through the contract. So the effective rate is $1.24 per gallon for the water that you're buying right now. We expect that to increase at a pace of about 5% a year. Again, what we've seen with City of Houston is it does go up and down a bit. Sometimes it's not as much as 5%, sometimes it's significantly more. It depends on their cost inputs as well. The other thing driving the total cost of your water is not only the increasing rates from City of Houston, but also how much more water you're buying. If you're going to be selling more, you have to be buying more, right? And so we project that that's going to be increasing from about 2.13 billion gallons in our test year up to about 2.28 over the next 10 years, I'm sorry, and that tracks that 0.7% increase of your population. So that all adds into what your total cost is for buying the City of Houston water. This year, we expect you'll pay about $2.7 million. At the end of a 10-year period, we expect you'll be paying close to $4 million. Again, that is a combination of increasing rates from City of Houston and increasing volume of water that you're purchasing. Same kind of idea on your wastewater side, from being the contract provider of Gulf Coast Water Authority. Right now, they treat about 1 billion gallons of wastewater. We expect that to go up to 1.1 or 1.11 billion over the next 10 years. And the cost associated with it going from $3 million today up to about $4.7 million over those 10 years. So again, you can see here some significant increases in those wholesale costs. The other primary driver of your rate plan is the capital improvement plan that you've got. It's a significant capital improvement plan, equaling $63 million on your wastewater side and $51.5 million on your water side. This is a 5-year plan. These are the projects that are associated with it. I'm not going to get into every line item here, but these are the projects, obviously, that have been provided by your staff to us. You'll notice here that the total number of the projected bond issuances or debt to finance those capital projects is somewhat less, millions of dollars less than the total capital improvement projects, and that's because of the grants and those kinds of things, and using using utility fund reserves where necessary and appropriate, and those kinds of things as you go through those years. And so while there is a significant amount of new debt that is projected here as part of financing this capital improvement plan, there are some grant funds that are coming in and ARPA funds that are being used for some of these projects, those sorts of things. You can see that the total amount of new debt issuances over time varies each year depending upon the projects. And water and wastewater are split up accordingly, that you can see on this chart. Unfortunately, there's a large number of your projects and a large amount of the cost that's kind of front-loaded in the first couple of years of the plan, and that's going to have a relatively immediate impact on our recommendations for your rates. The debt service payments, you can see here, this is obviously the amount that you pay to service the debt that you currently have. We've got the 4 different columns here: your current water and current wastewater, and then also the forecast for the future debt in order to fund the CIP program that I had on the slide a couple of slides ago. You can see here that your total debt service payments between water and wastewater is projected to increase from $5.3 million in the current year up to almost $5 million within a 10-year period. So nearly doubling over that 10-year period for debt service as well. This is how your total cost of service breaks down. And you can see here, one of the things that we wanted to point out was in fiscal 24, between the City of Houston and Gulf Coast Water Authority, they make up about 29.1% total of your water and wastewater services. By 2033, we expect that to be about 28.5%. So slightly less. Your debt is actually increasing slightly more than the wholesale providers are. But that cost doesn't go down with the wholesale providers. It will continue to go up as a total. A lot of numbers on this page. I'm not going to get into a lot of them. I'm just going to kind of walk through the structure of it very quickly. The first several columns here are the variety of different ways that we break down your expenses, operating and capital expenses, City of Houston cost on the water side, Gulf Coast Water Authority on the wastewater side. Capital outlays, those are not for the big CIP projects, but those are for the small rehab, repair sort of things. Your debt service payments projected for each year, your transfers and contingencies for each year. That brings you to your total cost of service. That's what your total cost is to do business. We then back out your non-rate revenues. Those are things like fines and late fees, those sorts of things that are not tied directly to rates but do come in every year. We hold that flat, and you can see that from a conservative standpoint. We don't want to begin to start thinking that we're going to be paying debt service with fines. Hopefully you get to a point where you're not having fines, right? So we do keep that flat, and that is sort of a conservative nature of our modeling. We then come up with the last column on the right there of our net revenue requirement. That's the amount that your rates need to cover in any given year in order to be break even for that year. All right, let's talk a little bit about the rate plan scenarios. Let me first start by saying that when we took a look at your rate structure, we didn't see anything that we felt like needed to be changed. You've got a good rate structure. You've got good separation between your tiers that sends an actual pricing signal to say, once you hit a certain amount of usage, probably time to start thinking about whether or not you're going to continue to water every day or twice a day or whatever the case may be. Having the base plus the inverted block, again, is what we see as a very common structure within Texas, and it's backed up and supported within your customer classes. So bottom line essentially is that over the next 3 years, because of those relatively significant debt issuances, we're recommending to cover all of the costs and to meet all of your financial metrics that you would need about a 7% increase on water and about an 8% increase on wastewater in January of 25. The same in January of 26, and then that begins to go down, particularly on the wastewater side, in January of 27. We're showing you a 3-year look at your rates so that you can ensure that this is not a single year plan. Because you sell that debt and it goes up and down on any given year, we actually put together a full 10-year plan that your staff will have, but we never really recommend adopting rates further out than about 3 or 4 years, depending upon the fluidity within the community. To be able to track better with the actual costs as they come in. So we've actually got a 10-year rate plan, but we're just presenting 3 simply because, again, that's the clearest that we have. Those projects are very likely to happen. They've been discussed, all those sorts of things. You get much further out than that, and it just gets more fuzzy.
Just to add to those comments, you may recall we recently installed the automated meters that do a better job of accurately depicting the amount of water we use. That's the biggest factor in the increase of billable gallons that you saw a few slides back. If we see that the rates are coming in a lot higher, we can delay or postpone future rate increases associated with it. So some of the debt that we would have issued otherwise, we delayed because of the water sewer working capital. We can do a similar thing moving forward.
All right. Again, this is simply the rates that we're recommending for those 3 periods of January, starting in January of 25, 26, and 27. You can see your base rate for your typical residential, which is a 3/4 inch meter, would go from $23.55 today up to $25.20 in January of 25, $26.95 the following year, and then $28.85. And you can see there a corresponding increase in percentage to your tiers as well, going from $3.21 for your first tier of 3 to 10,000 gallons, which is your average usage, your average bill for most of your, and these are on a monthly, the average is on a monthly basis. The $3.21 and going up to $3.95 by January of 27. And then you can see there the commercial rates, which really is just on the higher end of the larger meters, is the only real differential there, other than the flat rate for the gallonage. Same idea for your irrigation and sprinkler. And then the same concept on the wastewater as well. An increasing base charge and a corresponding increase in percentage on the volume charge. So what's the impact on the bill? That's the real question, right? So when we look at it, a 20,000 gallon, and we're going to use sort of the middle tier or the middle section of this chart here, a 20,000 gallon bi-monthly bill with 10,000 gallons of wastewater would pay $349.62 on a bi-monthly basis today. If you adopt this plan January 2025, that same use would go up by $27.08 or 7.7% combined for both water and wastewater. Again, that's a combination of the 7% water and the 8% wastewater. And you can see how that falls out for the following years. Another $28 in 2026 and $21 in 2027.
And those are estimated for 2 months usage, not a single month.
Correct. All right. The last thing I'll show here is one of the things that we pay attention to is not just the annual cash flow. That's sort of the beginning point. But we also pay attention to your total net revenues in any given year. The net revenues are essentially what is potentially left over in order to pay for things like unforeseen expenses, significant weather issues, those kinds of things. And you can see here that it does go up and down in any given year. We try not to use that as too much of a limiting factor because we know that's going to go up and down every year. That's not that big of a deal. That's kind of your cash flow issue. Your debt service, you can see here the sort of light blue is your current debt service. You can see there in 2031, I think it begins to fall off. You pay off some of your existing debt, and so that becomes a smaller component of your overall cost of service. The bottom right there is a critical one, though. However, that's your debt service coverage ratio. And if you're selling debt on the market like you do, one of the things that the rating agencies looks at is, do you have at least a 1.25 debt service coverage ratio? And if you don't, you're going to start paying higher interest rates. It's a component of your credit rating, essentially, from the rating agencies. And so you can see there that this rate plan is designed to keep your debt service coverage ratio at or above the 1.25 in all of the years of the plan. And that really, in your plan, has kind of become the limiting factor of trying to make sure that we're staying at that level as opposed to any annual cash flow needs, making sure that you're also in a position where you can have the lowest interest cost possible. And total revenues is the bottom left side, which break up between blue and water and the green and wastewater. With that, again, the proposed plan funds the expenses as we have projected them. Working with your staff, it funds the total capital improvement program that we have been presented and worked through again with your staff at length. The cash calls from the city of Houston, all of those kinds of things have been built into this plan. And these are the rates that we'd recommend that you consider, and we'll come back at a future meeting to have additional discussion on these. And also, if you have any questions in the interim that you'd like to get to us about any kind of detail, Katina, Rhonda are available to you. They can get those questions to me, and I'll communicate back, and we'll communicate with the entire council to make sure that you've all got the same information. I'd be happy to take any questions.
If we went back to that build volume.
Yes, sir.
Okay. We had asked staff to look into the possibility of seeing what kind of accuracy we got out of the digital meters that we've installed. We've installed about 98%, and this, as Mo mentioned a little earlier, is a great reflection of all of a sudden we saw build volume trend escalate. I think that's the word you used. With those escalations, our revenues had to increase. And I pulled the May report for water sewer working capital projects. And the beginning of the year, we had $17,844,178. And we walked through a 90-day reserve of $2,513,767. And we have left over right now above our 90-day reserve. This is as of May 6th, $4,230,011. And that's not including what we have a raw buy-in of $3,500,000. So that's $7,730,000 that we have over and above our 90-day reserve. What do you recommend us to keep, or when is it time to start giving back to the residents some of their money? I mean, we're looking at $7 million here.
Yeah, I understand that. I think, one of the other components that needs to be taken into consideration, however, is that debt service coverage ratio that I talked about at the last slide. That is based on what are your annual revenues that are used in order to support your operations, and how much of your debt service does that cover as a component of it. And so the aspect of the total amount of dollars that you've got in reserve, certainly if those are not otherwise assigned, can be
unassigned dollars.
Right. Those can be used to essentially buy down the total amount of debt that you have to take out. If you buy down that total amount of debt, that decreases that amount that you need in order to have additional debt service coverage. And so there's all of those different dials basically that you turn and try to look at and say, where's the right point to make sure that you've got the annual revenues to cover the debt service as well as the operating expenses, and how do you balance that between keeping money in reserve versus paying that down for some of the capital projects.
Well, when you come back and have a look at this again, kind of keep that in mind of what we have in reserve, what's unassigned, and then what we really, I understand what we're doing with the rates and everything, but we did escalate there. We saw a volume build trend that is beneficial to the revenue side. And so I know we have some bonds that we're going to be issuing, some $63 million on one side, but I think that would help us really understand, if we feel comfortable raising rates on our residents.
Sure.
All right,
sure.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Other questions?
Thank you, Mr. Gray. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good presentation. Very thorough. Love it. All right, here's my plan, folks. I'm going to take item 9 here, zone classification change. Hopefully this one will go pretty quick, and then we're going to take a quick break. Okay. So here we go. Item 9, zone classification change at 4201 and 4209 FM 528 from PUD 2015-18 to CSC/SUP, presented by Aubrey Harbin.
Motion. No, this is not a motion yet. Okay.
It's a
presentation.
Well, there's a public hearing too, so.
Let me check the time here, because I got to get it. It is 6:48 p.m. and I now call to order this public hearing regarding a zone classification change for 31.18 acres of land located at 4201 and 4209 FM 528 Road, known as Reserves B and D, in the final plat of Clear Creek Community Church of Friendswood, recorded in Harris County Real Property Records, RP 2020-230485, in Friendswood, Harris County, Texas, to change from Planned Unit Development, PUD 2015-18, to Community Shopping Center, CSC, with a specific use permit to allow NAICS Use 8131 religious organizations. This public hearing is being held for the purpose of giving all interested persons the right to express their views regarding a zone classification change concerning property located at 4201, 4209 FM 528 from PUD to CSC with a special use permit to allow NAICS 8131 religious organizations. Everyone desiring to be a part of this hearing should have completed the public hearing comment card and foyer and submitted it to the city secretary. At the podium, each participant shall give his or her name and address in order to provide a proper record of this hearing. The rules allow each person 5 minutes to present information. However, I encourage everyone to be as brief and to the point as possible. I'd now like to request that staff summarize the subject of this public hearing. Aubrey Harbin.
Good evening. Just a little explanation on this property. So this property has always been, the original zoning was single family residential, and then it's been included in various PUDs over the years. So with the change of the creation of the PUD for the town or city center, these two tracks in the red on the bottom map are not part of that PUD anymore. So the PUD that they were part of is invalid now. So this is a cleanup effort for Clear Creek Community Church. They began construction of their building in 2019. It was completed in 2022. Since then, they've made a few additions. Their existing detention pond is going to be combined with the detention for the city center. And if this zone change is approved, future additions to their property would be subject to the Community Overlay District and the SUP regulations. The future land use map does identify this property developing as retail. Religious organizations are allowed by SUP in that district, so it's in compliance with the land use map. And at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting held May 9th, following the public hearing, the commission voted 6-0 on a motion to approve the requested change.
Thank you. Is the applicant here desiring to speak? Okay, there being no one desiring to speak on this item, I now close this public hearing and move on to item 9B, consider an ordinance regarding a proposed zone classification change for 31.18 acres of land located at 4201 and 4209 FM 528 Road, Friendswood, Harris County, Texas, as described in the previous item, from Plan Unit Development 2015-18 to Community Shopping Center with specific use permit to allow next use 8131 religious organizations.
Motion second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion passes. All right, we're going to take a break. We'll be back. Let's try to be back at 7 o'clock, folks, and get this thing going. How about that? Attention getter. Hello. Here we go. All right, item 10, tax increment reinvestment zone. Guess I got it. It's 7:05 p.m. and I now call to order this public hearing regarding the creation of a tax increment reinvestment zone and its benefits to the city and to the property in the proposed zone, being approximately 326 acres of land generally located along FM 528 West Parkwood Avenue at the intersection of Friendswood Parkway, extending northwest of the city limits of Friendswood and southwest of Baker Road, and also including 3 of the 4 corner tracks at the intersection of FM 528 West Parkwood and Friendswood Parkway, wholly located within Galveston County and the corporate limits of the city of Friendswood, Texas. This public hearing is being held for the purpose of giving all interested persons the right to express their views regarding 1, the inclusion of property within the zone, 2, the creation of the zone, 3, the boundaries of the zone, and or 4, the concept of tax increment financing on the creation of the zone and its benefits to the city and to the property in the proposed zone. The public hearing rules remain the same as previously noted, and again, I encourage everyone to be as brief and to the point as possible. And if anyone has any questions, please direct them to me. I now ask staff summarize the subject of this hearing. City Manager Murad Kabiri.
Thank you, Mayor. I do not promise I will be brief, so buckle in. The question's been asked several times, what is a tax increment reinvestment zone? So it is a tool that is given to municipalities through the tax code of the state of Texas, Chapter 311 of the tax code. It's an economic development tool to use to promote development or redevelopment in a defined area that is currently determined to be predominantly open, undeveloped, and which substantially impairs or arrests the sound growth of the municipality due to obsolete planning, deterioration of structures, or site improvements or other factors thereof, which would not develop solely through private efforts. So that comment has come up. Why don't we just mimic what's been done elsewhere? Why are we talking about a tax increment reinvestment zone here? So what is a tax increment reinvestment zone? It obligates future revenues off a piece of property that are generated by the same tax rate that's applied to every piece of property within the city, but limits the benefits only to those within the boundaries of the district or of the zone. We establish a base tax revenue that's coming off the property as it sits today. So if we're getting $1,000 a year in tax revenue off the property, we'll continue to get that same $1,000. Once the property is developed, an increment above that $1,000 that's now collected will be set aside in a special fund to fund projects that are eligible, infrastructure that's eligible through the state law to allow for the development of this property in a manner that was described on the previous slide. So what can a TERS do? It can fund needed public infrastructure to provide drainage and mobility relief to benefit the properties within the TERS or adjacent to the TERS. It can build or enhance amenities into the infrastructure projects. It can develop green space for improved quality of life. It can encourage new quality private investment through public improvements. And it can also acquire property to implement project plans. Some of these characteristics were attributable to the first TERS that was created in the Friendswood City Center that we talked about several months back. Some of those apply here. What can a TERS not do? It cannot permit or approve building and development plans. So we talked about the alignment of Friendswood Parkway, or that comment keeps coming up. A TERS is not going to establish the layout or the location of the roadway. It's simply talking about the financing mechanism associated with public improvements. It can maintain infrastructure. It can exercise eminent domain, though, as I'll mention in a few slides subsequent to this, we're not going to exercise any eminent domain. And it can also fund projects that do not directly benefit the TERS. What a TERS is not is a mechanism for avoiding public processes, community engagement, or local regulations. Hence, this is our second public hearing on this matter. We are definitely engaging the public and giving them opportunities to speak to council about their thoughts and concerns related to the TERS. It is also not a regulatory agency. The TERS and its subsequent development authority are simply a board overseeing the financing components of the TERS itself. They're not in there to determine the adequacy of development standards or development codes, simply the financings associated with it. So there's a lot on the screen, but the basic principle boils down to why is a TERS needed for this property? It's 326 acres that's roughly along 528 as you go towards Pearland. Well, one, this property has been looked at for development for a number of years. It's currently undeveloped and opened, and we've had 3 significant prior attempts that have all failed. I say 3, we've had a total of 7 since I've been here, but these are 3 predominant ones. One, the multinational retailer Walmart tried to locate their a super center here in Friendswood, but due to the lack of infrastructure needed to serve their property for them to make it work, it didn't make sense. They have deeper pockets than any developer I've ever seen, and they weren't able to make it work due to the lack of infrastructure associated with their with this property. Similar to Walmart, Kroger looked at developing the property on the other side of 528, which is included in this TERS, and similarly, they were unable to develop their property due to the lack of infrastructure in this area. Hines, a global real estate development company, has also looked at the property that Tanos has since acquired and Jerome Karam has acquired for residential development, and they too were unable to develop it, each time pointing to the same limitations: lack of public access, lack of regional infrastructure. So it's been mentioned before, do we have capacity to serve this property? We have capacity in our wastewater treatment plant. We have capacity in our regional water purification plant, but we don't have the infrastructure necessary to get service to these properties. And it's simply not a matter of connecting to the latest development that's out there and adding on to the grid. Each of the neighboring properties that are there are at capacity. If we were to add more units to their network, to Wilderness Trails, to Creekwood Estates, we would cause overflows in their areas, and we'd see significant impacts to water pressures, which we already have right now during the summer months due to peak demand in this area. So none of the corporations that I mentioned before were able to overcome these barriers, and as such, they walked away from this project. The factors that I enumerated earlier are the reasons why they couldn't develop it. To date, no developer has approached the city and simply asked for a permit to develop these properties. They couldn't. They wouldn't be able to tie into the existing infrastructure network, and they wouldn't be able to sell a house even if they were able to build one, because they wouldn't have the water pressure and the resources necessary to serve those properties. So because of those statements, the city has determined that the property is currently impaired and arrested for growth and development. You'll have comments later on this evening by 3 of the developers that are looking to develop in this piece of property, and they're going to say the same things to you, why they're interested in developing in the TERS and what the TERS means associated relative to their projects. So just on the other side of 528, we saw similar development. So why can't we mimic what was on the other side of 528? You saw the wonderful growth in West Ranch and Sterling Creek and Avalon. Each of those projects built what's known as Friendswood Parkway. Each of those projects extended utilities to serve their developments. Each of those projects followed the rules that were in place at the time. Unfortunately, by several orders of magnitude, the development on the other side of 528 was much easier. For instance, we had a regional collection line for our wastewater sewage that comes off those properties that tie directly into our Crazy Horse lift station, so they didn't have to go build regionally significant infrastructure from a lift station standpoint. They just simply got to tie in and build lift stations suitable to their own development. Same with the water lines. On the roadway side, they got public investment dollars. They got tax dollars from citizens of Friendswood from the Galveston County bond election from 2017. They got yours and I's city tax dollars from the investment of over $1 million that the city put in for the roadway to be completed. They also got tax dollars in West Ranch from the management district in order to achieve this. So this was not done on the backs of just those developments out there. Sure, the developers bore some of the costs, but the majority of the costs were picked up by those public agencies, which each and every one of us that live in Friendswood are paying for. The difference between this property and the TERS that we're talking about, only the properties bounded within the TERS are going to pay for these regional infrastructure. So it's not going to be done on the backs of existing Friendswood taxpayers, only those that are within the boundaries of the TERS. A number of the people that are in opposition to this project are in that picture where we did the ribbon cutting, opening up Friendswood Parkway. So what is TERS number 2 going to bring to Friendswood? It's going to bring retail and office uses. One of the biggest office uses is Castle Biosciences, an exceptional story out of Friendswood, Arizona, and New York, which a company that started with 3 individuals and now blossomed over 600 employees nationwide. Their headquarters are currently in Friendswood, and they want to stay in Friendswood, wanting to move from the 505 South Friendswood Drive building over to this property and develop an office campus of anywhere of 160,000 square feet to 240,000 square feet. In order to do so, they're looking at the same site that Walmart was looking at, but they have the same development hurdles that Walmart had, except they now have an opportunity through the TERS to be able to achieve their project goals by looking for a partnership with the city of Friendswood. We also have large lot single-family homes being proposed. We have half-acre lots that are estimated anywhere from $1.5 million to $2 million of value once they're completed that are going to be built, right where Hines was looking at developing, but they weren't able to make the finances work. We have some garden homes proposed on the backside of some of the retail on FM 528. It's been mentioned what happens if a property owner within the TERS doesn't want to be within the TERS. Well, as I stated earlier, there's no impact whatsoever to those property owners if they decide not to move forward with the project. The rubber meets the road when they do a development agreement with the city of Friendswood. In the development agreement, it'll outline what the responsibilities are of the developer, as well as outline what the responsibilities are of the city through the TERS that's created in the subsequent development authority. If you don't want to participate in the TERS, you don't have to participate in the TERS by simply not doing a development agreement. If and when the property owner that decides not to participate wants to move forward with improving their property, well, obviously they're going to have to extend some of the regional infrastructure necessary to support their project. And in doing so, then they can decide if they want to do a development agreement or by some miracle go at it on their own. And trust me, I would love for every developer to go at it on their own, but it's unfortunately we can't ask that of them. State law is very specific. You can only burden developers with that necessary to serve their project. You can't burden them with infrastructure that's considered oversized. Friendswood Parkway is one that's been talked about ad nauseum. Several folks have mentioned, well, it's been voted down before, so why are we even pursuing that? If you look on the map on the screen, it's of the Bay Area. League City in the year 2000 was 45,500 and change. Pearland was 37,640 and change. And Friendswood was right along there with them at 29,037 people. Fast forward to 2024. These are census data from the American Community Survey from the census. League City is now at 116,000 in population. Pearland's 127,000 in population. And Friendswood only grew about 10 to 11,000 at 40,000. So we're stuck smack dab in the middle of 2 behemoths in the Bay Area location. And all that traffic currently is being routed to FM 518 and through Sunset. It doesn't matter what we do in terms of limiting growth or doing smart growth within Friendswood, we're going to be impacted negatively by the growth in our neighboring cities. Drilling a little further, in 2019, the city did a citywide traffic study with Brown and Gay Engineering. They looked at all of our major thoroughfares, in particular the 2 that I want to highlight here are Sunset and FM 518. FM 518 in the year 2019, so this is 5 years ago, took roughly 20 minutes to travel from one side of town to the other side of town during rush hour traffic, both AM and PM. If you don't widen 518 If you don't have an alternative route for FM 518, you don't put grade separated intersections, and I'll explain what that is later on, it will take 45 minutes to get through Friendswood by the year 2040. There are already 400,000 plus homes going south of West Ranch and Avalon, plans being approved by League City as we speak. Those same 4,000 plus homes are going to be routed through the city of Friendswood, whether we like it or not. So it's a matter of making a decision. Do we prepare for that impact to our community, or do we look the other way and hope for the best? So how is traffic measured? The Institute of Transportation Engineers has developed a scorecard for measuring transportation trips. It's just like you would see it in school. If you get an A, you have free flow of traffic, less than 10-second wait times at every stop sign or every intersection that you travel, all the way to an F, where you have over a minute delay at every intersection as you travel down a particular roadway. How did we score? Well, in 2019, FM 518 at FM 528 was an E, which is bad, in the AM, and an F in the PM traffic. You'll note a lot of times folks will have to wait 2 or 3 cycles in the EM to get in the PM to get through FM 528 and 518. Similarly, FM 518 at 2351 scored a D in the AM peak and an E in the PM peak. So Friendswood Parkway is not new. You've heard it called Brittany Bay Boulevard. You've heard it called Lake City and Pearland Parkway. It's been on the books for over 35 years. It currently connects State Highway 146 at Clear Lake and travels that yellow highlight on the screen before you all the way to Pearland Parkway at Beltway 8. There are 2 segments that are missing today. The segment that's highlighted by the blue arrow, which is League City Parkway, which I may add is already paved, tying into Friendswood. They're finishing up the curb and other infrastructure associated with it, but it's anticipated to open within the next 4 to 6 months. The other segment is the one we're talking about, the segment from 528 to Dixie Farm Road, or FM 1959. The 2 stars on the page that I want to note are the intersections of 518 at 2351 and 518 at 528. Both of these intersections will have to become a grade separated intersection in order to avoid some of the congestion that I'm talking about. And what I mean by grade separated intersections is they would have to look like El Dorado at I-45 or at 528 and I-45, where one roadway has to go over the other in order to have that free flow of traffic. To achieve that, you're going to have to wipe out those corners from any commercial development, further inhibiting and impairing their successes. So the Pearland Parkway is not new. Friendswood Parkway is not new. Much like the city of Friendswood has a major thoroughfare plan, the city of Pearland has a major thoroughfare plan. They have planned for the extension of Pearland Parkway to get to our city limits, just south of FM 2351. The map on the right shows where Pearland Parkway dead ends currently to Dixie Farm Road, and then it shows somewhat of a railroad track symbol, but going south of Dixie Farm Road, curving on the west side of the Pearland Regional Airport, and then tying into FM 2351 and our city limit lines. FM 2351 already exists, but the dotted lines you see on their page in Brazoria County are intended to reflect the expansion of FM 2351 in the future by TxDOT. Mentioned City of Friendswood having a major thoroughfare plan. We do. It's simply lines on a map that indicate the future extension of roadways and their general location. In fact, we include in our exhibit to the major thoroughfare plan a statement that says in developing areas, the general locations of major and minor thoroughfares will be determined by the ultimate street pattern of that development. So we don't tell necessarily the developer you have to put the road in this location. We work with them to find a suitable solution, both from an economic viability of their project as well as meeting our needs for regional growth and regional infrastructure. This segment from FM 528 to 2351 has been looked at for a number of years. The image you have on the screen before you is what was done over 20 years ago by TxDOT with Turner, Collin, and Brading, which was AECOM, or became AECOM. So there are 4 alternatives listed: the yellow one, the red one, the purple, and the green one. Well, the yellow one was determined by the developer is not going to be feasible because Friendswood Parkway currently dead ends into FM 528 where it dead ends into FM 528. So we're not going to move it on the south side of the roadway when it's already located at one particular point at FM 528. Once you cross 528, you have one of 2 choices: going on the back side of the Wisniewski old white house that had burned down, and the south side of the Drainage District Regional stormwater basin, or going on the north side. If we went on the south side of the detention pond, we would have to use eminent domain and purchase multiple $1 million+ homes in order to achieve the right-of-way needed to make this project a reality. We don't want to kick anybody out of their homes in order to achieve this much-needed regional transportation project. So we stick on the red and the green options. As you cross Sugar Creek, you come up to Wilderness Trails. You can either go slightly to the south and go down Wilderness Trails as shown in the red route, or you can stay parallel to the backside of Applewood Homes and stay with the green route. It was a conscious choice on my part. I encouraged the developer to pick the red route because the green route impacted more homeowners. Simply put, it backed up to the lots of a number of homes on Applewood. That and the fact that we wanted to make sure that the roadway wasn't seen as simply a speed a drag strip. If the straighter the roadway, the more chances are that people are going to travel at higher rates of speed. Going a little further, every one of the property owners that currently live out there and those that own property out there have a right to develop their properties. By state and federal law, we can't establish regulatory controls in such a manner that we limit the ability of a person to use their property and achieve some economic return for the value of their property. The image on the far right is a 1978 aerial map of the Wilderness Trails area. As you can see, it was either all oil field or rice fields back in 1978. All of Wilderness Trails developed with the intent of these properties developing as well. In fact, the extension of Castlewood was planned back when Wilderness Trails was developed. That's why there's a barricade at the end of the street and not a cul-de-sac. That being said, I had promised council as well as the community back when we did the budget that we had set aside funds for a traffic impact analysis before that connection was ever made. That traffic impact analysis is underway right now. The project in particular that's raised the most or garnered the most attention recently was the Estates of Wilderness Trails. It's roughly 42 lots that was approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission. Their conceptual plan was back in September of 2023. We talk about Friendswood Parkway and the major connection that it will be in the future. We're not talking about it being open today. In fact, it's going to be a phased project. All of these efforts boil down to economic viability. There has to be enough value put on the ground within these developments in order to support the infrastructure costs associated with them. So the area of Friendswood Parkway highlighted in yellow and blue. The area in blue is what Lewis Tanos will build today. That's what's going to be supported by the economic value. However, the right-of-way necessary to build the segment in yellow will be dedicated to the city, and not just the right-of-way, but also the additional landscape buffers that will be provided on both sides of the roadway, and I'll explain a little bit further on the subsequent slide. The roadway as it sits today, the 2-lane asphalt roadway, will not be any closer. In fact, it'll be moved further away from the existing homes that front Wilderness Trails in the future because of the right-of-way being dedicated. And the ditch will go away, and you will have a landscape buffer, subsurface storm sewer line, and you'll have a sidewalk on top of it. So you wouldn't have what you have today in terms of kids standing on the side of a asphalt roadway next to a roadside ditch waiting for the bus. The typical cross-section for a boulevard is 100 to 120 feet wide. He's recommending 120 feet in this particular location. You will have 10-foot landscape buffers on either side of that either side of that roadway, inclusive within that 120-foot right-of-way. That's what those green boxes are up there. You would then have a space for sidewalks as well as grass, and then a top of curb before you have 2 travel lanes in concrete, an esplanade in the middle, and then another 2 travel lanes in concrete. The buffer and the enhanced transportation from a sidewalk standpoint vastly improves the current condition of what's out there. In fact, there were comments made last time that the school buses already have a difficult time picking up people at this location. It's going to be made even better, and we have buses stopping up and down at FM 518 to pick up kids as we speak today. So, in a nutshell, that's why we're having the discussion this evening and why we're having the public hearing. I'm available for any comments or questions council may have.
Thanks, Murad. We got a whole stack of people wanting to speak, so again, I'll ask you to try to be brief. Chris Johnson.
I have handouts for council, Mayor. I'd ask that they be included in the record.
It includes a letter that we sent to the city prior to the hearing, but it wasn't included in the record. My name is Chris Johnson. I'm building my home at 36 Wilderness Trail. Could you bring the map back up, Mr. Kabiri? This is where we're going to be. We're in the nondescript section that's carved out of this proposed tax increment reinvestment zone and will receive none of the public dollars associated with this proposed development. I came down and I talked to the council last time about why this violated all of your ordinances and stated plans that you made publicly available. None of the things that Mr. Kabiri showed you today are publicly available things. He's now sprung them on us the same way everything has been sprung on us by bringing them to you and see how this is a good idea. I can tell you it's not a good idea. It doesn't make any sense. He said this is not about the road, and then he goes off for 2 minutes or 3 minutes talking about all of the reasons that we need this road. And you have decided that the people that are excluded from the TERS are going to bear the burden of it. Are you kidding? My house is going to be right next to this proposed thoroughfare. I came to this city. I asked for your permission to build it there. I did it before this land plan was ever contemplated. And you came back and you said, no, we're building it next to your house, and somehow you want us to agree it's a good idea. I listened to the finance plan and listened to you talk about the needs of the city and the money and the cash flow and tax increases, and then you have the gall to talk about a good idea that takes tax dollars away from the general fund. What are you doing? You've decided somewhere along the way that you need this road so bad that you have no choice. You do have a choice. You're making a decision tonight over hundreds of millions of dollars and 30 years of Friendswood. That's what you're deciding tonight. A TERS that will last for another 30 years that our kids will have to live with. And here I have to hear about cash flow problems and tax increases, and now we're going to divert money for this road. And that is the only reason that this is happening. You have created the inability to develop this property because every developer that has come has been saddled with the idea that if you want any reimbursements from the city, you must build 4 lanes of a road and you must put it where we tell you. And then you come and say, well, they wouldn't do it. It was too expensive. It was too expensive because you've insisted on a roadway. And the documents I've provided you, every single one of these developers has been told, we're only going to entertain your TERS if you will build our road. That's the only thing that this is about. Your road. You're so desperate for your road that you have done everything but make a plan. You talk about 35 years on the book. Where's the plan? How was I supposed to know? I will tell you, I wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have brought my family back to this town. I wouldn't have spent all of the money I had spent just for you to come and tell me that it's going to be worth less. And how do I know it's going to be worth less? Well, Mr. Griffon wrote a letter when this council decided to purchase 23 Wilderness Trail. And he wrote a letter that said, as soon as the plans for Friendswood Parkway were made known, that property could not be sold. So the city, he encouraged, paid $830,000 to buy out that property. We are excluded from this TERS. What's going to happen to us when the road goes by us? Are y'all going to show up to bail us out on the property value that you are taking? At the corner of that roadway, Clay and Kristen Rosetto are going to have the parkway on both sides of their house. Both sides. You're going to bail them out? You are offering a giveaway. That's what you're doing. And you're doing it because you think you have no choice. You do. You have a choice. If you choose to do a giveaway because you think you need this road so bad, instead of making a plan, waiting for your thoroughfare study, if you make that choice, then you are deciding to ignore your own laws and ordinances. If you do that, you are sacrificing the integrity of this government. If you do that, you are sacrificing your own credibility, I will tell you, because no one will be able to trust that you will stand by your decisions. I'll read the end of Mr. Griffon's letter. It is now up to us to stand by our convictions and have the courage to follow through with what we started. Should we fail to do so, would send a chilling message to our city manager and staff that we do not have the courage and conviction to stand by our decisions when the wind might blow in a different direction. I understand that they want it. I understand it's difficult, but it's not hard if you're willing to follow your rules.
Blair Johnson.
Good evening, council members. My name is Blair Johnson. I'm also building a home at 36 Wilderness Trail. I think Chris has covered the issues with the TERS, but I think all of the problems with the TERS also prove all of the red flags of the issues underneath the TERS, the reasons that we're doing this. The property next to our home, Estates of Wilderness Trail, that they're trying to develop, it has its own issues. It doesn't comply with the future land use map. It's too dense. Okay, we've got that as our first issue. The drainage was an issue. They wanted off-site drainage. It wasn't permitted. It's not allowed to be off-site drainage. So now we've got 2 red flags. The third red flag, obviously, is the parkway coming through. It's a major thoroughfare. It's the biggest road that your ordinances permit. It's coming in front of our homes. It's coming next to our homes. Parkways, major thoroughfares should not pop up next to people's homes. I'm not sure what map we were looking at from when it was called Brittany Bay or whatever it was. Looked very old to me, but there's a 2018 major thoroughfare plan that shows where this road was supposed to go. This was not it. It was supposed to go somewhere else, and now it's somehow popped up next to our brand new home and in front of our neighbors' homes. That is not right. That shouldn't happen. Parkways of this size, of this serious nature, should not pop up next to our homes, next to where our children play. It's just not right. It just doesn't comply with your ordinances. Your subdivision appendix requires for major thoroughfare plans to comply with the major thoroughfare plan that was set up. This one does not. This type of thoroughfare plan is described to move fast and heavy traffic. It's been described as moving freight. Those aren't appropriate for residential areas. Our area is developed. I continue to hear that somehow our area is not developed. Our street is developed. We have homes on property. That was what my understanding of what Friendswood has always been. We've had space out here. And now all of a sudden we're considered underdeveloped. I think that subjects lots of people then to having a parkway show up next to your home. If you have acreage, that all of a sudden that means you're underdeveloped. It's just not true. Thirdly, the parkway supposedly is going to cross the Exxon development, which has its own deed restrictions, which said there should be no structure over those wells. It should remain accessible. So we've got that as a fourth problem. And finally, the TERS. I think Chris has pretty much covered that. But, you know, again, we're developed. This is what Friendswood was about. We should be allowed to have our acreage without being considered for a thoroughfare to run through us. It's just inappropriate. Finally, I will remind you, your preamble for your charter says good government can only be defined as that which is wholly and justly participated in by the people. The people are here. The people are all telling you, we don't want it. It's not right. I've yet to hear someone, the people, not the developers, that have come to say this is a great idea. We all like it. It's just not happening. We don't want it. Finally, we start these meetings with prayer. And as your future neighbor, we all remember that you're supposed to love your neighbor. So I ask you, would you be comfortable with this program, with this roadway coming by your home? When you came and did your due diligence, when you bought your acreage, when you decided you were going to build your dream home and move your children somewhere else, would you be comfortable with this popping up like this? And I think the answer would be no. Thank you.
I'm Car Dave. Dave, I'm sorry.
Good evening. My name is Omkar Dave, and I am a resident of 33 Wilderness Trail. By trade, I'm an orthopedic surgeon in Friendswood, but when I'm not working, I'm just like you guys, enjoying my peace and tranquility and the safety of my home. And that is about to be put under jeopardy because of the proposed road, the way it is constructed. And so I'm here to oppose the road, the parkway, the way it is drawn out, and also what we believe is the unjust and the illegal use of the TERS in this matter. Now, the reasoning provided for the need for the TERS, I think, is flawed. I think there's a lot of generalities, and we should deal with facts. Number one, reason provided that it's a blighted area. It's simply not a blighted area. What makes it blighted? Well, many developers have tried but were unable to develop it, is because the city insisted that the road be there. If that insistence wasn't there, Mr. Tanos would be able to build that development tomorrow. And that was the same thing with the other developers. So the reason for the TERS is that the area is blighted is false. Number two, this area is open and underdeveloped. It's not open. We have residents living everywhere. It is not open. It's not underdeveloped. Certainly, the taxes that we pay, the value of our house is determined by the city, demonstrate that it is not underdeveloped. Thirdly, as you've heard previously, you guys are here to act at the interests of the citizens. None of us like this idea. You're taking this decision away from the citizens and unilaterally making this decision. I think that's unjust and that should not be done. Let me demonstrate how invasive and intrusive this parkway would be, okay? I moved here about 2.5 years ago. No, I started building about 2.5 years ago. We moved in about 6 months ago. About a month and a half after we moved in last August, we found out about this parkway. Now, this is where I live, 33 Wilderness Trail. Where you guys are, that's the new development, okay? The parkway would start at the corner, come along the wall, make a 90-degree here, and come right in front of my house. Not just my house. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now, Mr. Kabiri mentioned that if it went straight, it would affect other homes. Now, the degree of how that would affect one versus other is debatable. But you tell me, if there's a thoroughfare right in front of my house, is that not invasive? Is that not intrusive? Directly in front of my house, and not just me, 5 or 6 other residents. So I encourage you to please consider this. The decision is to vote no for this TERS. Please consider that, do the right thing. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Dave. Jennifer Gary.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Gary. I'm at 31 Wilderness Trail. So the Davies are right next door to me. Y'all have seen me here multiple times. My main concern is the TERS now, along with the road. That's all hand in hand. There's no current alignment study for the parkway right now. So why do we not vote for it today and wait till that's completed? That way you can make an informed decision. Because right now you're just making a blind decision. That's what it is. What happens if you put a parkway in the alignment study that shows what you've created that won't work? Your goal is to have access from I-45 to Pearland, is it not? There's no defined path for this to happen. After this portion of the parkway, how does this make sense? There's no plan for after. What will happen to our addresses? My home has had this address longer than I've been alive. Wilderness Trail is a sought-after street to live on because of our acreage and quiet street. This parkway will significantly diminish our property value. It's not going to be a quiet street. I don't even know how I'm going to get my travel trailer into my own driveway because of this parkway. How is that my property and I can't even access it? How will you make it safe for the kids and my neighbor's kids to get on their school bus? It's been mentioned about sidewalks and a 10-foot buffer. You know, we have a special needs child on our street, and this directly affects them. The school bus has to stop in the middle of the road. We all know people don't stop. Even though it's illegal for them to not stop, people don't stop. So how is that going to be safe? And that's 4 out of the 5 families that are on this parkway that have children that get on the bus. So take that into consideration. That's almost all of us that street is crossing across. That's every single property except for 1. This week, we're putting a 6-foot aluminum fence in the front of our property with a gate. My kids are asking if it will look like we're in jail. What do I say to them? In a way, it does feel like we are. This is what we have to do to protect my children. That's how I feel safe. This is not what we moved here for. We moved here to Friendswood for the community, for the schools. We didn't move here to feel like we're in jail. According to the TERS, it's a lack of development and infrastructure. This is a developed area. All of my neighbors and I have run numerous utilities to our homes, utilities that we personally had to pay for. The only infrastructure that is missing is this parkway. The parkway you were requiring the developer to pay for, and why other developers have decided against acquiring. An unwanted parkway in this community. Why did Sterling Creek and Avalon have to pay for their own parkway? Why does this developer have to benefit and not them? Why does this developer in the road not have to follow the rules every other homeowner in Friendswood has to follow? Several council members have stated, why would a residential property want to be on a major road when the property on 528 was rezoned from the residential to commercial? This is exactly what you're doing to us, making it not our choice when we moved to a quiet road for a reason. Please put yourself in our shoes. If your home was where we are, would this even be up for discussion? Please vote no on the TERS. Don't vote yes, just to make this road happen. If you vote yes, you're putting the carriage before the horse. There's no reason to make this happen today before the alignment study is completed. Please don't look us in the eye right now and make us feel like we don't matter if you vote yes. Please be considerate of your neighbors. Put their friends back in Friendswood, please. Thank you.
Shauna Talton.
Hello. My name is Shauna Talton. I live at 35 Wilderness Trail. I am terrified of public speaking, so this is just too important for me not to voice. So just forgive my nerves. My husband and I moved to Friendswood in 2001. We really didn't know anyone here or anything about our city. Later that year, Tropical Storm Allison happened. A lot of our city was flooded. A lot of our neighbors needed help. That was the first time I realized what a wonderful place we really have here. Everyone was just coming together to help one another. Over the next few years, we started our family. Both of our girls are now K-12 graduates, and our 11-year-old will be starting 5th grade at Bales in August. Magnus was born a typical baby, but suffered an anoxic brain injury just shy of 3 months old. That injury has left him with severe cerebral palsy. He was hospitalized and requires lifelong medical intervention. The bills were overwhelming, but for the second time, our community rallied. And our friends and neighbors helped us with fundraising, meals, babysitting, anything we needed so that we could put our focus on Magnus and his health. As Magnus grew, it became harder to carry him up and down the stairs of our home on Charleston. We dreamed of having a place to build a 1-story home that Magnus could have full access to. 3 acres. Our dream came true, 3 acres at the end of a quiet street. A little taste of country life within our beloved community. We learned about the bond election that included the extension of the Friendswood Parkway just before we began construction and immediately started asking questions. We attended council meetings. We went to town hall Q&A about the different bonds and reached out to our city officials. We were told that we had nothing to worry about. They were just lines on a map. There's no real timeline. This could be years and years and years. We may never see it happen. We believed you. We built a forever home that he can never outgrow. Well, now there's a new line on the map. It had never been there before, And it's right in front of my house. It's in my front yard. You're making our quiet lot major frontage to a major thoroughfare. And as Jennifer mentioned, I remember last council meeting, you said it was crazy that people would want to live on such a busy road. Well, we agree. We don't want to live on a busy road. We want it to be what it is right now, quiet, safe. We don't want to face a 4-lane parkway. The traffic that brings light and sound pollution, our son's bedroom is in the front of the house, headlights coming in our window, and the noise that traffic brings, all that is just, it's not okay. And the message that we're getting is that we're less important and less valued than this developer or whoever, not specifically him, but anybody that wants to do it. That our 23 years living here, paying property taxes, staying involved in our community means less than this development, this parkway. And it's unbelievable to me. You've allowed our family and several others to build their estates here without a definitive or public plan. What we have built here isn't something we can just up and go build again somewhere else. I understand the need for growth and progress, but it should be done responsibly and with the respect for the existing homeowners. And I have never heard anyone besides the people on the side of this podium say that it's a good idea, just like they said before. The citizens don't want this. You know that. I mean, it's been said a million times. We don't want this. It's not necessary. And we don't want the tax either. Thank you very much.
Bob Charlton.
All right, y'all. I'm Robert Talton. That was my wife. I think she did a good job for her first time public speaking. I live at 35 Wilderness Trails. We've been here for a little over 20 years. I'm not going to go into all the personal stuff because I'm going to get emotional. I'm going to start crying every time I talk about my sons. We're going to leave that part out. I'm going to speak today about my concerns with the proposed extension of Friendswood Parkway. My family and I built what was supposed to be our forever home, which is probably not now if y'all do this. We're going to end up moving. I'm not dealing with it. I shouldn't have to. It was a little over 3 years ago. Not long after purchasing the property, we found out about the possibility of the parkway just crossing our street, not going in front of it, crossing the street. So I actually came up to the city, Mo. I went to your office. I left you a handwritten note. You never got back to me about it. I went up there again, spoke to, I guess she was your secretary, and she's the one that told me that these are all just lines on a map. The city didn't have the funding to pay for it, that we didn't really have anything to worry about. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe it's not as big a deal as I'm thinking it is. Anyway, the two other paths that were shown, one was going in front of Friendswood Estates, one was, I guess, crossing where the easement is. The one on Friendswood Estates, I understand a mansion was built there. It is not feasible. You're going to end up taking two different pieces of property to make that happen. And I guess the part that I don't understand is why y'all would continue to let us build without a plan in place. If I would have known the road was going in front of my house, I wouldn't have built. Neither would any of them. Give me a second. I got horrible eyes too. Anyway, okay, so not long after that, I guess the bond proposal came up for Pearland Parkway. I got nervous again, started coming up, paying attention to stuff, see what's going on. It was voted down. So I didn't think we had anything to worry about again, but that was the end of the matter and we could relax. But here we are again. It just seems to me that our votes did not matter. It seems that you guys dropped the ball years ago by not designating a path while continuing to let everyone build. For whatever reason, you guys so desperately want this parkway to go through that you're willing to overlook the will of the voters and the families that it is going to affect the most. I have yet to meet a single person other than the developer and you guys that think that this is a great idea. This room, it's filled with people that are all opposing this route. And they're also proposed, I guess, to the means that are paying for it. I guess the way I see it, none of you would be okay if you lived in our houses. I can't imagine that y'all would think this would be a good idea if you lived in my home and you're literally, the way it's drawn out right now, I'm gonna have headlights coming in my front door. I literally bought at the end of a dead-end street to get away from traffic, to get away from everyone. And now I'm gonna have to be looking at headlights coming in through my front of my house every day. It's just not right. And, you know, it's, I'll say this, the only good thing that I've, that's come about this is I've got to spend a little more time with my neighbors. And I love you guys. You all are awesome. It's brought us all together, and which makes me even want to fight for this more, because you're just affecting them just as much as us, and it's not completely necessary. You know, it could actually cross the easement in 45 across his property, and it wouldn't affect anyone in the Wilderness Trail subdivision, and we wouldn't have to look at it. Nobody would have to look at it, but I don't understand why that hasn't been proposed. That's the path of least resistance that infects the littlest amount of people, but it's not on that map for some reason. And I'm afraid what's going to happen is you guys are going to vote for this TERS, and then he's not going to have any reason to move the road. He's already got his funding approved. Why would he move it? It doesn't care about us. Hold on a second. I guess it's just, I'm done. I get frustrated, but it just, it bothers me so much that this was allowed. There was never a plan really put in place. It should have been done a long time ago before we were all allowed to build. And I don't understand why, because I don't think any of you guys would be okay with what's happening to us if y'all were in our shoes. All right, thank you for your time.
Kathy Rogers. Kathy Rogers.
Kathy Rogers. I live at 207 Charleston, so I'm not directly affected by the Parkway, although the two-level interchange at 518 and 528 is probably not in my best interests. I would say that, you know, I would go, you know, way outside the box and consider a roundabout. You know, that's a way of avoiding traffic lights and moving a lot of traffic at, you know, greater speeds without these, you know, whatever they said, 85-second delays or something. So that would be one suggestion to look farther. I'm not sure why those more southern routes, I guess the yellow route and the purple route, aren't really being considered. And we may have to, you know, we, being you, would have to consider some of, you know, the houses that would be removed. But that would be a couple of houses. That's not everybody on Applewood having the traffic back up to their house, or that's not everybody on Wilderness Trails having the traffic basically racing by their front yards. So, I mean, my heart goes out to these people. The Taltons were great neighbors when they lived on the corner of Charleston, but I'll tell you, Winding Way is not a slow street. And I think that was bad enough. They saw that, and they were not pleased with that amount of traffic, and moved to the end of a dead-end street for quiet. You know, I'm thinking this Tears, the toothpaste is out of the tube, folks. I mean, we already lost Walmart, which would have been a great tax benefit to the city. We've lost, you know, well, I guess Kroger's elsewhere, so we didn't lose them, but something else could have gone where they are. And, you know, whatever Heinz was going to do in terms of tax revenue. So now doing this for a little bit of residential development, and I mean, that's only future potential residential development, that basically all the risk is on the citizens and the taxpayers of Friendswood, and all the benefit, if there is a benefit, accrues to the developer who's developing that, and maybe the lot owners who move into that part of the city. So, you know, it also pushes us ever closer to that magic 50,000 number, where we take over a lot of the TxDOT responsibilities for the traffic lights in the streets and what have you. So I think just encouraging development, you know, like Jason Jones said at the beginning of the meeting, for the sake of development is also not a good thing. You know, again, I don't want to see Friendswood's tree bulldozed down, you know, in the interest of project and progress and building, when really, you know, we're thinking about the citizens that live here, that have, you know, built a home here, made a community, and now all of a sudden we're moving traffic, you know, at the speed of light through. And, you know, have you seen those parts of Nass Road 1 that are bypassed by the bypass? You know, Franca's and Mom Malone and all that part there. I mean, that is not good. And we are going to be bypassing downtown in a big way. So I'm not sure why we're doing all this wonderful downtown development and not, then we're going to just bypass it for everybody to have the, basically Friendswood Parkway International Speedway running through everybody's, front yards or other people's backyards. So I would sincerely request, on behalf of everybody in the city, because I don't know anybody in the city who really likes this whole thing going on. So except for the people who directly benefit at the expense of the taxpayers. I would highly recommend that you reconsider and try to, look into those other more southern routes. Just because, if you've got to impact somebody, impacting the fewest people possible seems that that's the best choice to make. You're entrusted with, the public's, their biggest asset, their home, their property. So, people who have lived there, 10, 20, 30 years on Applewood, or people who have, built on 3, 4, 5 acres on Wilderness Trails, it seems like, let's try to give them a benefit of a doubt. So anyway, I request your, kind consideration and really looking into who benefits and, who takes all the risk, which I believe are the city's citizens of Friendswood. And I just don't want to see the taxpayers take that kind of risk. Thank you.
Matt Johnson. Mr. Johnson, I just got a partial address for you on this. Could you help me out?
It's in Houston. I'm an attorney in Houston. I'm here. I'm a graduate of Friendswood High School 2001. I'm here in support of my brothers on Wilderness Trails, and the rest of my family are residents. My sister and my brother.
Thank you, sir.
Everybody's down here. Quickly, just the appearance. I've been educated on this TERS issue. Obviously, it's directly impacted my brother. My dad's on the Drainage District Board. I think you guys have an appearance problem, and that I'm certainly not against progress, but I am against cronyism. And progress at the expense of many in favor of a few, that's an appearance problem. That looks bad. The description I saw here is that you guys are discussing the benefits to city and property. And as best I could tell, the city is behind me. It's the residents. You've heard all of them. I can tell you that, just like they said, it's everybody on that side that's spoken in favor of everybody on this side. The residents is the city. It's certainly not you guys. It's not you, Mr. Kabiri. The city is the residents. And the benefits to the property is one guy. And that sounds like cronyism. It's not a good look. It's an appearance problem. I ask you to reconsider that. I'm just here in support. I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Margaret Pickle. Margaret Pickle.
Members of City Council, 26 years ago, my expectations upon reading the City of Friendswood's vision statement in 1998 were very high. It said, "Together we build our future in a friendly place to live, work, play, learn, and worship." After lengthy research and with excitement and anticipation, this was the city for us. We moved our family from Europe and bought on Wilderness Trail. We came here for acreage, a generational home, a quiet street, a homey small town community. We began to build that future for our kids and now are building it for our grandkids. We work, we volunteer, we play, we learn, and we worship here in Friendswood. The expectation of our continuing the same lifestyle is now in jeopardy by allowing the creation of the TERS number 2 to develop the parkway. I have many questions, but because there was no town hall meeting to discuss these issues with Friendswood citizens by city leaders, I do not have the answers, and I'm only left with assumptions and confusions. Today, this presentation should have been done in a town hall meeting where there could be interaction back and forth so questions can be understood on both sides. My concern is not for the properties being developed as long as drainage and transportation rules are met for both the commercial and the residential. My concern is with the parkway Is the city only using TERS 2 to get the parkway developed? For many years, and I've been here through all of them, the citizens that were affected by this road voted the road down, 1998, 2006, and 2015. I don't understand that what is called the qualifications for properties in the TERS, because that area is not blighted at all. I personally know the person that lived across the street from me, oh, forgot to say 29 Wilderness Trail, sorry. The person that lived across from me did not want that property developed because they were going to live there a long time. They had to sell their property and move, and pretty quickly after that, that property was bought to be developed. How do 33 of the acres in Galveston County Consolidated Drainage District be put in the TERS? Those are drainage district detention ponds. They will never make any kind of tax. They're always going to have to be detentions. And again, this is where that communication would help, because I don't understand how that goes. The same with the property the city built or bought. There will never be tax on that property to be put back into the TERS. So that is a question I also have. It appears at this time the only reinvestment money would come from the Narnia Way property and the number 30 Wilderness Trail property. I'd also like to know who is really determining the placement of this road. Is it the city? Is it the developer? I do know that the 117 acres north of the number 30 Wilderness Trail has many prohibitions, as there, for example, there should be no digging due to some of the monitored wells and some of the toxic areas. What is the purpose of continuing this parkway through an existing neighborhood? The pros and cons have been up and forth to city council for over 26, 27 years. And the pros are usually very few and far between. The cons for the parkway outweigh those pros. In closing, the Friendswood mission states, it is the mission of the council and the staff of the city of Friendswood to provide the highest level of service to our citizens, all citizens, at the greatest value. If TERS 2 is passed, disappointment comes from the waste of time, money, and studies used during the 25 years that this parkway has been discussed. If TERS 2 is passed, disappointment comes from no public meetings or questions for answers, no voting ability by the citizens as it has been in the past. Part of the city's strategic goals include to better educate and inform the citizens, to increase ownership and involvement in city government. This cannot be done without two-way communication. Since my time is up, I just would like to close with, I have been around this road for a long time. There's a lot of discussion. Let's think outside the box. Why can't it go 528 to 35? Why can't it just stop here and let Pearland pick it up at 2351? I know there's some traffic issues, studies, those things may still need to be made. So thank you very much.
Frank Stokes.
Good evening. I'm Frank Stokes, Chief Financial Officer at Castle Biosciences. We're a company that offers diagnostic testing services to patients with cancer and other conditions. We were founded here in Friendswood about 16 years ago. Our first office was here at 820. When I joined the company, we had half of the upstairs floor. Because of the value our tests offer to patients, we've been fortunate and we've grown very, very quickly. And we are now in the process of trying to determine what we're going to do for the next 10 years. We have to think in 10-year increments as we think about planning. And it's very important to us to stay a Friendswood company. Many of our employees have moved here, but even those that don't are customers of Friendswood businesses. They come here almost daily, most of them daily. And so we wanted to stay part of Friendswood, but we were unable to to do that in existing facilities. So we identified the opportunity to set our growth and set our growth plans through a new development, which is unfortunately not viable without the TERS. So our request is that you approve the TERS as proposed so that we can keep Castle here in Friendswood, and thank you for the time.
Thank you. Steve Shippey?
Good evening, Mayor, Council. So I became aware of this just a few weeks ago. I found information when I went to look for it to be kind of limited. Some of it came from the rumor mill. Oh my gosh, how's this going to impact me? Well, I live on at 904 Rigel, so I come to figure out eventually that I am not directly impacted as many of these folks are. But I read with some interest anyway what I could find on the city's website and elsewhere. I found that the description of the property and the challenges that have faced prior attempts to develop, yeah, I get it, infrastructure. But I also observed a little bit of a pattern, not only in the proposed ordinance, but also in the proposed finance plan that kind of threw me a little bit of a curveball and made me ask some more questions. So, in general, portions of the property were formerly used as an oil field, which creates barriers to development. Same wording or similar in the ordinance over and over and over again, and we've heard that many times. We've seen it up here tonight. I'll read it again. Portions of the property were formerly used as an oil field, which creates barriers to development. So I asked myself, what does that mean? And what's the how would that possibly impact the finances? So that led me to do some more digging. That led me to a deed for one of the properties, which some of the folks have spoke to tonight already. And I found it interesting in there that use restrictions, one thing that threw me for a curveball, that grantee and subsequent owner agrees that before the property is redeveloped, a survey to locate specific locations of all oil and gas wells on the property must be conducted. But set that aside, I get it. There's oil wells active and abandoned all over the state, all over the country. There's houses in close proximity. There's setback rules. So, okay, peace. But, okay, that led me to ask more questions, talk to more people, and eventually I find out that in 2020, in conjunction, or maybe for ExxonMobil, there was a study done, a site assessment, environmental risk, etc. It's, I want to say 1,000 pages. I looked at it today. Most of it I don't understand, but I did understand enough of it to raise some flags and question, wow, what is the current state of the property? So I go over to the finance plan, section 3, description of maps. 3.1, existing uses and conditions. And I'll jump right to it. Portions of the property were formerly used as an oil field, which creates barriers to development. So my question is that really an adequate description of the property, especially as it relates to possible discovery during whatever digging or development goes on? And so I flip in the finance plan to a breakdown of costs, and that leads to more questions because I don't see anything that specifically addresses environmental mitigation. I just see general statements, contingency, paving, etc. And it's not clear to me where mitigation, should we run into it, who's that going to fall on? Or even how big it could be and what the impact to the overall plan might be. I can't believe that I'm the only one that has knowledge of these things, but yet there's not a better description in the current statement of condition of the properties or the TERS. So I bring this up, may not be required by the state regulations that govern TERS, that this be addressed. It seems to me, though, that it would be the right thing. And I'll also just close with, I've never seen a development 50 miles in any direction that was ever slowed down in the Houston area because of a lack of roads, pipes, sewers, lift stations, and drainage. They want to build, they build. Something's not adding up here. That's all I got.
Brady Burnett.
Good evening. My name is Brady Burnett. I live at 5478 Apple Blossom Lane. I'm on the Harris County side over off of Apple Blossom in Wedgwood Village, but I was a 12-year senior at Friendswood High School, graduated in 1998. We came back to Friendswood to live near family and raise our kids here, and we love the area. Last time I showed up to oppose a change of zoning to this council, it was to oppose a zoning change, a little property right over off of El Dorado. Minorly affected negatively my property value. I thought with the proposed zoning change, that zoning change was put down. My house is magnitudes less worth tax-wise and otherwise to many of the people being talked about affected here today. So I can't understand. I can understand where they're coming from, but I don't personally have a personal stake in the exact direction of that parkway. My bigger concern is that Friendswood, at least to my estimation and my limited knowledge, but I have a little bit, has never used things like municipal utility districts or other things. We've had PUDs and a few other things, but we've never had to rely on those kinds of things for expanding our infrastructure. We've paid for it. We were shown that, right? So my main concern with the TERS, again, in my limited estimation, is the city's, us taxpayers are likely going to have to pay for the expansion of the utilities that are going to be necessary in some amount anyway, and the decision to grant the funds accumulated to the TIF in the TERS will be at the direction of a board, I guess. And again, in my limited estimation, I would rather be able to vote directly for how my taxpayer money are being used within the city to be able to fund those things and not have some board be able to somewhat arbitrarily, possibly, or as was stated, whether it's true or not, a optics being that this board may have the ability to use our tax money to benefit whatever property they may put in place there, right? Lastly, a couple of years ago, less than 2 years ago, I evaluated buying property over off of Baker. I went into Brian Roman's office and asked them, hey, where's this parkway going through? At the time, he said, this is when Hines was about to let go of the property over there, said the developer that eventually puts that property in place is going to have basically the say on that. But what I'm hearing today is I don't think that's true. And had I bought that property, I'll tell you, I'd be as upset as some of the people that are living there right now. So I know the parkway is probably inevitable. I think there's probably better places to put it. And I would ask you to please vote no on the TERS. I don't think it's for our city. Thanks.
Thank you.
Jerome Karam.
Mayor, City Councilman. My name is Jerome Karam, and on behalf of my wife Leslie and I, engineer Sel Dent, we're just here to state that we're 100% in support of the tiers. I own the 117 acres off of Wilderness Trail, and on the technical, I'm going to let Sel speak. So Sel, if that's okay. So he would like to explain reasons why some of our support over here.
On the in support for the TERS, primary reasons are we have a dedication of 120-foot wide right-of-way land, 2,400 linear feet. We have a construction cost of building a boulevard section, 2,400 linear feet. In order to develop this 117 acres, there is not a sufficient water capacity to serve 37 2.5 acre lots. There is no sanitary sewer infrastructure in place. We have to upgrade a lift station, existing lift station at Castlewood. There isn't a sufficient storm sewer outfall. We have to go off-site past the school property into Calvert's Creek. So there is a deficiency in infrastructure to develop this land. So TERS is needed to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, sir. Lewis would like to speak on behalf of this project.
Evening. We set out to build a neighborhood, a beautiful neighborhood, that's all. Not to impact everyone around us, not to create problems, make people's life miserable. We specifically chose to build half-acre or larger lots, which we see as a great need for the city. If anyone looked around, you know you can't find that to save your life. And we did it on purpose to have single-family homes, big, beautiful, $2 million plus homes. That was our goal. In researching this property, when you go to the east, utilities are capacity. Go to the west, utilities are capacity. What are we supposed to do? If the cost for utilities and infrastructure is more than what we can sell the lots for, how do you develop the property? There's a reason that we're the 6th or 7th person to try to do this, because it's just not possible without a TERS. The math just doesn't make sense. You're looking at a $6 to $7 million loser if you don't do that. How do I make that happen? So in my opinion, the TERS is probably the most valuable instrument for cities to develop in partnership with developers and not cost the taxpayers more money. I keep hearing people talk about how, oh, this is gonna, our tax dollars, it's not their tax dollars. No one outside of the boundaries of this property, their tax dollars are not paying for this. It's the property taxes that we create with the new development. There is no new taxes, and the homeowners that will live in this are gonna pay the same property taxes that they would pay otherwise. This is not coming from anyone outside of the boundary. Now, I understand that this parkway, you know, I'm not smart enough to tell you if this is where it has to go, if this is the road plan. I'm not privy to all that. I don't design the roads for the city of Friendswood. You know, I will tell you it's not my favorite thing that is impacting homes on that road, but we're planning on building our home on that road, facing directly where the parkway comes in, our front door. I would not ask anyone to do something that I'm not prepared to do myself. Anyone who ever knows me, and you all know me, my daughter is my life. She's gonna stand out there and wait for the bus, just like everyone. You go down Friendswood Parkway, where Sterling Creek is, all the way to Lake City. There's homes and homes and homes, playgrounds and schools and homes. 35-mile-an-hour speed. It's not a 4-lane major highway, as it's been called. It's not a drag racing course. School buses pick up kids there all the time. Am I happy that it's going on wilderness trails? Of course not. I don't want to impact anyone that lives on that street. There's nothing that I can do. I don't create where it starts in Pearland or where it starts in Lake City. We set out to build a beautiful neighborhood for people who want to come live here. We've been here 10 years. We love it here. We have purposely developed what we think is in the interest of the city. We brought companies, we brought Methodists in a larger capacity, we brought UTMB in a larger capacity. Everything we do is thought out, thoughtful, and to the benefit of the city. So whenever we start a development, we ask, what do you need? What can we do for you? How can we improve not only the development we're doing, but the areas around us? In this development, I understand we have utilities that go far beyond the boundaries of our development, our property. A bridge, a road, fire lines, water lines, sewer lines, lift stations. All that is possible because of the tourists. If a single developer tried to do this on his own, it never happens. It's impossible in the world that we live in to pay for all these things. And unless I'm selling these lots for $1.5 million, which that's not gonna happen. We're pushing the top of the market and making the deals with the builders to come in and build beautiful products and beautiful homes for families to live here. And even at pushing at the absolute ceiling, it wouldn't pay for this. So respectfully, I request that you pass this tonight and I get on with my business. And as always, I'm totally open to working with the city and the homeowners for landscape barriers, sound barriers, anything that we can do within the confines of our development and the abilities to improve the lots around us. We're open. We're all open ears, ready to talk. But I can't control, no one's ever going to like everything I do. I've come to terms with that over 25 years of doing this. Someone's always going to be mad at me, but I have to find the best path forward and do the best job that I can.
Thank you. Now, anyone else that didn't have a chance to speak that wants to speak? All right. There being no one else desiring to speak on this item, I now close this public hearing and move on. Item 10B, consider an ordinance designating a contiguous geographic area being approximately 326 acres of land generally located along FM 528 West Parkwood Avenue at the intersection of Friendswood Parkway, extending northwest to the city limit of Friendswood and southwest of Baker Road, and also including 3 of the 4 corner tracks at the intersection of FM 528 West Parkwood Avenue and Friendswood Parkway, wholly located within Galveston County and the corporate limits of the city of Friendswood, Texas, as a reinvestment zone pursuant to Chapter 311 of the Texas Tax Code, to be known as Reinvestment Zone Number 2, City of Friendswood, describing the boundaries of the zone, containing findings related to the zone, creating a board of directors for the zone, establishing a tax increment fund for the zone, and providing for the effective date and termination date of the zone. I'll make the motion on this item to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Let me just say why I'm in favor of this. And, this is tough. I know you're shaking your head. I know. This is a tough one. I mean, I always say that, the decisions that we make up here are generally pretty easy to make, but they're hard to face some of the residents that don't agree with us when we have to make them. This TERS will create development out there that wouldn't develop. It would be eons. Again, 20 years ago, City Council probably should have done something to get that road started there, but they didn't. And I know they kicked the can down the road to us. But one thing I stood on when I ran for mayor in 2018 was a couple of things. I said I'm going to improve drainage and flooding, and I'm going to improve mobility. Traffic flow in this city is getting terrible. I have a hard time pulling out of my neighborhood. My neighborhood is right on 528. My house backs up to 528. There's a sound barrier there, but we hear the traffic going by all day, every day, all night. But we chose to live there, and that is why mostly I am in favor of this. Is that we need this road to go through there. We need the development first. The road will follow, and why do we need development? We need development to reduce the tax burden on all of our residents, because right now, you saw in the, this is my turn to talk now, okay, folks? Our residents, pay a bulk, 80% of our property taxes come from our residents, and we need more development out there. This is going to encourage some commercial development out there, obviously some residential development, so our tax base will increase with the development out there. And all of you came up here and said, hey, the 6 or 7 of us are against this, and I understand that, and I get it, but 95% of the Friendswood residents want traffic to improve. So I'm sorry that, I'm going to be in favor of this TERS just because we need to help our residents be able to get around and keep their tax rates as low as we possibly can. Now, somebody mentioned that, hey, voters voted this road down. Well, it was a bond item a few years ago, and it didn't pass. Now, on that ballot was a question. Should the city borrow money to pay for this road? And the residents said, no, we'd rather have you borrow money to fix drainage and other things, and no, we don't want you to borrow money. So, okay, yes, they did vote down, they voted down a bond for this road. There are other ways to pay for this road. Developing it and using this TERS to a tax increment to feed back funding to support the infrastructure that we need is the best way to do it. Who seconded? Sally?
I did. I would like to say a few things. And I know, Murad, this is some of what you pointed out. This is 35 years in the making, and I agree with the mayor. The can has been kicked down the road those 35 years. I appreciate that it's going to be a boulevard with sidewalks. It's going to have residential. It's not a freeway. If you go down the League City side, you'll see that. It's not a freeway like we've been talking about. That's not going to be the case. The traffic, as the mayor said, has continued to be a problem. It's only going to get worse. As Murad pointed out, Lake City and Pearland took off. They've exploded with growth, and we're caught right in the middle. As a matter of fact, there are projections that in Texas, over the next 25 years, they expect another 17 million people in our state. In the Houston area, that translates to about 4.5 million people. Where do you think these folks are coming from? And I'll give y'all a hint. It's not another state. They're already here. Last year alone in Houston, 100,000 babies born within our, and I've heard people all the time, close the gate. Well, they're already inside the gate. We can't close the gate. I would like to highlight, and I know y'all know this lady very well. She passed on a few years back, but Joyce Baker. And there was another time in our history, some of us up here are old enough to remember Joe. It's an excerpt from her book. Talks about Stevenson Park. Back in 1973, City Council decided to buy 10.5 acres from the Stevensons, which is a former fig orchard. Cost $95,000, taxpayer dollars. The family donated the other 2 acres, asking that the park bear the family name, hence Stevenson Park. The park acquisition ignited a heated controversy. People were not opposed to a park, but they were opposed to paying for one. Mayor Lowe proposed a plan for paying for it, which included borrowing money from another city fund and $47,500 grant dollars from the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department. Even so, there was disagreement, and the September 13th, 1973 newspaper headline read, "Council crams the park down our throats." After the fury died down, and in retrospect, most citizens agreed Stevens Park was a good investment. I ask you, 50 years later, what would our community be without Stevenson Park? Can you imagine that? I can't. Sometimes council has to make unpopular decisions. And I think tonight may be one of those, Mayor. I'm going to be supporting this.
Anyone else? Councilmember Aaronworth.
So one thing
go ahead.
One thing I heard a lot of repetitive things in the comments tonight. I believe there was 15 people, if I counted or so, that spoke against this, with only developers speaking for it. I heard about path of least resistance, is something we need to look at farther. I heard a lot about a cart before a horse because we've kind of building a road here to the middle of nowhere. And that I just don't see anyone on the other side of it. And first of all, thank y'all for coming, because I think we need to have situations like this, and y'all are the ones that elect us. And we can say it's 8 houses on Applewood, but it's a community. I saw people from several places in here that saying this is an issue. Well, I understand the need for the parkway. We can all see the stats. The timing, the method are very problematic for me. I'm still learning about what a TERS mechanism is. I mean, I sell produce for a living. I don't really know how to handle those, but I'm still learning, and I'm willing to learn more about them. I think there needs to be a longer segment to try to educate the public on what we're doing here. I appreciate the staff's efforts to try to find an entry point for this road, because we do need to have this road. I just don't know if we know the means to have it right now. I feel like we've got a 1,000-piece puzzle. We're going to do 250 pieces in the middle of this road. We're going to stick the other 750 pieces up in a closet, and 20 years later figure out if we can put it together. It's kind of where I see this road being. The biggest con that I see, though, in this whole process is I've been up here almost 5 years. I've watched us talk about Castlewood, capping it off 3-4 times, and numerous things. It keeps coming up, and I don't know how to put that to bed. And every drawing in here shows that that's opening back up, and we're back at that can of worms again when we keep trying to give y'all. Somebody spoke earlier about our mission, and we're not showing you integrity when we say things up here, and that really bothers me. We keep moving the goalposts on where the road's going to go. We don't know where it's going to go. I can't approve something on a TERS, whether I understand what it is or if I don't have a path. I don't know where people's houses can go. I don't see a lot of financial gain commercial on this, because I see what we lose, what we gain in financial building a new builds, we probably lose on tax value of the existing 35-year-plus homes there that have always been there. I grew up near Bel Air till I was 10 years old. They had a very similar situation happen there in the 70s in regards to 610. Where 610 cut the city like a knife. It was it was ugly. And basically the lesson that came out of it was, don't ignore an aroused community. Don't try to overbuild against the will of the people. We're trying to overbuild against the will of the people, and I will be voting no on this. I was hoping it would get tabled, but I will not support this because I do not know where the road to nowhere is going, and I can't support a mechanism behind that if I don't know where that road's going, and it's not going to affect y'all people because I'm here to protect y'all.
Councilmember Elsor.
Well, obviously, this is my first council meeting, and it's certainly been a challenging and interesting thing to research and look into. I don't want to table the issue, but I do want to postpone it. I'm going to move that it be postponed, and some of the issues that have been raised tonight looked into further. This is a decision that will impact Friendswood for a long time to come. And I, for one, want to know more about it, don't want to rush into a decision. And if we voted for it tonight, it still would be probably 10 years down the road before the road was built anyway. So I'm going to be asking that it be postponed.
We have a motion to,
You have to work. You have to go on the motion now, I guess.
You don't have a motion to the table, so you don't have to.
Oh,
that's not a motion.
Yeah, I'm not moving to
What's
table
the
it. Table it means you take it up later in the same meeting per Robert's rules. To postpone it means to move it to another meeting. So I'm moving that this decision be postponed, further research, a town hall meeting, that type of thing.
we have a motion to postpone.
Can I second that motion? I second that motion.
Motion and a second.
I have a discussion question then. Before we vote. I'd like to understand exactly what we're doing here. I mean, I understand what you just read as to postpone. I don't understand the difference of what does that mean versus tabling this matter. So I'm John, I'm not looking at you. I'm looking at our city attorney or Murad to help me with this one.
So
what are our options here if we want to delay this to another meeting?
Sure. Well, we've historically used the motion to the table to do, in essence, what the postponement was that you suggested. The long and the short of it is you are not selecting the route for this roadway as part of this approval. You're approving the financing mechanism to create a tax increment reinvestment zone. At some point in the future, you'll be presented with a development agreement that will outline the responsibilities of the developer as well as the responsibilities of the city. You can suggest and influence the alignment of the roadway during the development agreement process. I will note, though, there is no scenario in which everybody's going to be happy in terms of the location of that roadway. In order for us to move any of the infrastructure forward, not just the roadway, the utilities, the water and sewer, the same hurdles that Heinz had, that Walmart had, that Kroger had, you have to have a partner that is economically viable for them. So let's say that we want to do a 45-degree angle through the middle of Wilderness Trail subdivision and keep it away from the Applewood homes, keep it away from the Wilderness Trails homes. If it renders the property with the pipeline limitations that are out there, if it renders the property less viable economically, then it's dead on arrival. There is no project proposal that will work if we don't have a willing private investor. We mentioned Avalon, we mentioned Sterling Creek, we mentioned West Ranch. All of those were done on the backs of our current taxpayers. We're talking about a project that's going to be done on the fruit of the developers that are building within this development and nobody outside of it. So current property taxpayers in Friendswood, you, me, I live in Friendswood, I had to pay for the section of Friendswood Parkway, both with Galveston County bonds and also City of Friendswood tax dollars. What we're proposing here is no City of Friendswood tax dollars. We're talking about the value added by these projects.
Let me just have one follow-up then.
Yes, sir.
Because you mentioned it and I started. So you mentioned that tonight's vote is just on the TERS. What other options will come before council? What were the next steps that council could stop the process completely or let it keep going forward to completion?
So you'll vote on the development agreement, and then after that, it's simply a matter of platting and compliance with our subdivision
And
ordinance.
when should we see that development agreement? Is that a month away, 2 months away?
Each of the developers are on a different timeline, so you'll see it anywhere from 3 to 6 months from now.
And if we voted those development agreements down for whatever reason, that would stop the TERS from going forward.
Until a development agreement's executed, there's no movement on the TERS. So the TERS just establishes the zone and freezes the revenue coming off of it. But without development on those property, there's no increment created, and without a development agreement, we're not obligating any future funds of the city towards any project.
So approving the TERS just moves this, allows this to continue to develop. It's not a final yes or no.
Correct.
On how it's voted.
Correct.
And so
Well-
back to the table. I just want to, because I'm not sure I understood all the things you said, and you got a good chance to clear up some things in that. But what are if we can table it, and that just means if it passes a vote to table it, then that means we will take it up at our next meeting.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I'll just say, I'm not going to vote to table this. I'm going to vote against tabling it because, I don't put something on the agenda so that we can table it till the next meeting. I'm ready to talk about it. John, I understand. This is your first meeting. This is trial by fire, I've had 3 meetings. I've had 3 meetings like this in 8 years. Your very first meeting is one of these. So I'm going to say, I'm going to ask that we not table it. So
Well, just one point of order. I know Robert's rules pretty well.
Good.
When you table a motion, you take it up later in the same meeting. That's not what I'm moving for.
I understand.
I'm
We
moving
understand
to
postponing.
postpone the
Yes, sir.
meeting. Postpone this decision until further research can be done, till we can have a town hall meeting. That's my motion.
for the purpose of this, yes, very possible.
I just need clarification. Your first motion was to postpone it to the next city council meeting. Now you're amending, and it was seconded. Now you're amending your motion to postpone it and have a town hall meeting?
I guess you misunderstood me, Ms. Birch. I said I was moving to postpone it. I didn't say when to. I said for a period of time long enough to do some investigation and looking into these issues that have been raised tonight.
So to postpone
Postpone.
indefinitely?
Okay.
No date.
So, all in favor of postponing? Go ahead. Yes, please, go ahead.
So, I guess I don't need to talk right now. I can wait. We're gonna just vote on this postponement.
Okay.
So, we're just postponing to approve the TERS. We're postponing the TERS.
The vote on the turf.
Vote on the TERS. I have no problem with the TERS. I have no problem with the TERS. I do have heartburn about the road. I have a lot of heartburn about Castlewood opening. You've known that. Rose Tanos has known that. I don't like the idea. I like at least emergency gate. But I do think that the road is inevitable, and I've done some research with a lot of what's going on, and I was never a fan of the road to begin with, but now I do believe it is inevitable, and I believe we need to find the best place for it. So an agreement, if I'm understanding you, we could approve the TERS tonight and not commit to where the placement of the road would be until we have an agreement with the builder on the development agreement, is what you're saying?
Correct.
Just reiterating what you said, the approval of the TERS is only a finance mechanism. It is not determining where the road is.
Correct.
Yeah.
And
So
that
we need to make sure we all
and even
understand
if
that.
it got passed tonight, if the TERS got passed, then there is time to follow up with whatever makes sense for town hall meetings or whatever else makes sense. No, it gets us in the same spot.
Before a development agreement
As-
is approved and
But-
entered into.
But either there's votes to pass the TERS or there's not. But go on, please.
Okay, I have a quick question. There's been a conceptual passing of this map that we have now by P&Z. It's conceptual only.
Yes, sir.
Aubrey, what other steps does P&Z go through besides conceptual? Because I understand the conceptual acceptance by P&Z is a fairly new situation for us. We usually do not, or we used to not do conceptual. We used to have real hard plats. So my question is, how much leverage would the city council have in regards to where the road goes if we pass the TERS now, or entering, or before it ever goes to P&Z again? Would we have leverage if I don't want to pass a TERS and then say, okay, well, this is where the road was, and we don't have a chance to move that? So it's been conceptually approved by P&Z. I'm just concerned that if I say yes here, then P&Z has already conceptually agreed to it. Am I locked into this road?
You're welcome to answer.
The master plan was approved in September of 2023, so the developer has that approval. So their next step in the process would be a preliminary plat.
So currently, they're designing the infrastructure associated with it, and so they're doing the feasibility of every bit of infrastructure associated with the project based off of that approval, the conceptual plan in September 2023. Council doesn't have the opportunity to review future plats. However, you have the opportunity to approve the development agreement. You are the authority by which that agreement stipulating the responsibilities of the developer as well as the city moving forward. If you desire to move the location of the roadway as part of that process, that is within your purview, and that would be your opportunity to influence the location of that roadway.
I think within that development agreement too, sound barriers,
Correct.
landscaping, all those things can be taken into consideration.
Yeah, because my original understanding of this road was it was to go straight and it wasn't going to turn. And then we later on found this mapping that shows it going up Wilderness, going down southwest on Wilderness Trail. So I don't want to lock myself in on a TERS with a conceptual P&Z plan that's been adopted without the ability to influence a future location of that road.
And you could make that part of your motion to create the TERS. You can say approval to create the TERS subject to the development agreement hashing out the location of the roadway in the future. But the financing mechanism would be put in place.
Well, I would do something like that because I have no problem with the TERS. Mr. Tanos, he teed up the first TERS, was fortunate that he had 100% of the entire development. I wish that he had more of a percentage of this TERS because I know what he has been able to put forward with and to the city. But I would want to make it subject to the ability to possibly to alter that road on Wilderness Trail.
As I mentioned earlier in the evening, without a development agreement, all of this is moot. The creation of the TERS will not impact anything out there without a development agreement.
All right, I understand now where we are.
Okay, so
But you have a motion on the table
To postpone.
to postpone that you'll have to dispose of that motion first.
Okay. Did you want to say anything else, Brent? Yeah. No. Okay, the motion on the table is to postpone the decision on the TERS. So all in favor of postponing, raise your hands. Okay, that motion fails. So back to the original motion, which I made to approve the TERS.
And I would like to amend that motion and make it subject to help me, Mo, what I said? Make it subject to
The negotiation of a development agreement, which would include the alignment of Friendswood Parkway.
That's exactly, you got that, Letty?
I amend my motion. Amend the motion to Councilmember Graffon's.
Subject to the negotiation of the development agreement and placement of the road.
And I will amend my second as well.
So you have a first and
All
second.
right. Any further discussion?
Yeah.
Go ahead,
I
Joe.
should probably not actually, but I will anyway.
Go ahead.
I always want to get it on the record. I mean, thank you first. I thought that was a great comment. Thank you for everybody being here tonight. I think everybody up here benefited from your comments. And I appreciate everything that you're doing to put your voice and your thoughts forward. So, you know, this approving or not approving this TERS is really, it's been complex, and it's been a difficult choice for me personally. And I'm going to read a lot of this because I want to make sure I say this right, because left to my own, I would probably miss something and it wouldn't make sense. I have become convinced in all of my meetings, all of my phone conversations, that we absolutely need a parallel route to FM 518 within Friendswood. You know, and you've heard much of the increased traffic is not necessarily from the growth of Friendswood itself, but from its neighbors coming through. And we've all seen it, and it's just going to get worse if we do nothing. I've also been convinced that if we don't, that we need to make the improvements to our water and sewer systems that on the south side of Friendswood. I'm convinced after meeting with staff multiple times that we need to do that, which is included in this TERS, and as well as the Friendswood Parkway is in the TERS. If passed, you know, the TERS could help continue this process of building the parkway that we need, improve the water capabilities that we need, while developing property that would otherwise not be easily developed. And I think you've heard all that multiple times from various parties up here. However, one major problem for me has continued to be the route. Just kind of like Councilmember Hanks said, it's the route along wilderness trails that has caused me pause for some time. Since September of 2023, sometime shortly after that is when I started meeting with city staff going, you know, this just isn't right. And I understand it's picking between two different routes, at least right now. And I've asked, and I've sat down with Mr. Tanos, I've sat down with city staff multiple times. And I guess I have been convinced by city staff, primarily, well, actually 100% by city staff, that there really isn't a viable choice for Friendswood Parkway. If we need that parkway, and I'm convinced we do, to relieve traffic, and we got to start somewhere. I understand roads to nowhere, and that I get that, you know, but you got to start somewhere, because if you let this go through, the next alternatives are even worse. If we have to start condemning property, taking people's homes, that's worse, in my opinion. So I believe that we've got to start somewhere. This is the time to do it. The developer is moving forward, wants to develop this property. This is our time to further pick the route. So, you know, city staff's convinced me that this is the only viable option of this current proposed route that allows that property that Mr. Tanos owns to be developed. Now, I'm not a developer. I don't know all the costs associated, but city staff, this is their job. This is their expertise. I'm going to believe them because they're trying to do the right thing for Friendswood, all of Friendswood. So when I make decisions, and I heard it a lot of you tonight, and I just want to be clear about this. I was on planning and zoning for 5 years, and I had to do this a lot of times. Any kind of development decision, you always have to put yourself in the position of the developer. What's right for them? What makes sense for them? You have to put yourself in the position of the neighbors. What's right for that community? And I've tried to do that, but you also have to go further than that. You got to put yourself in the people that want to come to Friendswood and want to live in these houses that Mr. Tanos is going to develop. You have to think about those folks, and you have to think about the rest of Friendswood. What you're saying here tonight is important, and we all listened, and I definitely for sure listened. But we've got to think about what's best for Friendswood overall. So, I've worked hard on this matter. I've repeatedly pushed the city to give me alternate routes. I've asked Mr. Tanos for alternate routes. I've asked anybody and everybody for alternate routes. That still allows the property to be developed. And I'm basing my decision on what I've really heard from staff, and for lack of a better plan, unfortunately, I still don't like the route along Wilderness Trails. I don't like it. I haven't liked it for almost a year now. But I think it's the most viable option, and so I actually support the TERS. So it may not be popular, but I think in putting myself, what's best for Friendswood, all of Friendswood, that's how I have to vote.
Anybody else? Councilmember Ellisor?
Yes, let me understand your amendment a little bit better. Are you saying that we could at some point in the future not approve the development plan if they don't put the road where we want it to go? Is that sort of what you're saying?
It's subject to our approval of the road.
But that includes within the track that's set out here in the map, and not somewhere alternate to that wouldn't affect these homeowners.
So, in regard to your question, Councilmember, the motion is already built into, the approval is already built into the process anyway. The creation of the TERS does not determine the alignment of the roadway. We've said that from the get-go. The alignment of the roadway is going to be determined by one of two factors: the platting that's done at the Planning and Zoning Commission and the development agreement that this council has the opportunity to weigh in on. So within that development agreement is where you're able to negotiate the specifics with regard to any project, similar to what we did with the Friendswood City Center and our expectations of the park, the detention, the Fire Station 3, etc. I don't even think y'all need to clarify it as part of your motion, because that's by law the definition of the TERS. The creation of the TERS itself doesn't determine the layouts of any of the properties therein. Now, to your concern as to if the roadway needed to be aligned outside of the boundaries of the TERS, why could that be taken into consideration? Unfortunately, short of me showing you on an aerial map, any alignment that's outside the boundaries of the TERS will have to go through existing homes and neighborhoods. Anywhere as little as 2 homes to potentially 15 or 20, because we still have to go to a fixed point where the roadway currently is. If you go further south, you're getting into Creekwood Estates and Windsong neighborhoods. If you go further north, you're going right down through Wilderness Trails. Any further south to Moore Road makes the project economically not viable based upon where the roadway dead ends currently in Pearland, because you would have to make a severe swoop to the south and parallel 35. And so the intent here is to let me back up. Traffic works just like water does. It finds a path of least resistance and finds its own equilibrium. So the homes that are currently being built in West Ranch, south of West Ranch, in Avalon, Sterling, and Lake City aren't going to go all the way down to 35 to make their way back up to 518 and Beltway 8. They're going to either go north to 518 because their intent is to get to downtown or to get to other parts of Houston. So the limitations for the roadway are fairly succinct based upon where it ends in Friendswood currently at 528 and where the roadway ends in Pearland at Dixie Farm Road.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right. So Letty, read back the motion on the table.
I have a motion by Councilmember Burfon, seconded by Councilmember Branson, to amend the motion on the first motion, to amend it by approving the TERS contingent upon the negotiation of the development agreement and placement of the road.
Okay.
Which
All
is-
in favor? Opposed? 5-2.
Now we go to the original motion.
As amended.
As amended. The original motion as amended. So it's
You
it's the
approve the
same thing.
amendment.
You're voting on, you have to go back to your original as amended.
It's the Roberts rule. So now that you voted on an amended motion, you're voting on the original motion as amended.
Okay.
Again, but the reality is half a dozen in one and 6 in the other. The TERS, creation of the TERS does not determine the alignment of the roadway. So the development agreement is the process by which you negotiate that.
Okay, the original motion, as amended by Councilmember Griffon. All in favor? Opposed? All right, thank you. Item 11, City Manager's Report, presented by City Manager Murad Kabiri.
Losing our audience.
Y'all don't want to hear this?
Go ahead, Murad.
So, as you know, we're getting into the summer months, and our Parks Department is busy as ever. Our big celebration's coming up, the 4th of July, here in about a month. We will kick off festivities with a grand parade down Friendswood Drive in Friendswood. Don't plan on traveling down Friendswood Drive at 10 a.m. on July 4th. It will be shut off. We will follow up the parade with a daytime program at Stevenson Park. Thank you for that bit of history, Councilmember Branson. And then after the daytime program, we'll take a short break and get prepared for the evening festivities at Centennial Park, which will include some introductory comments from council members, pre-recorded comments, a show by the Spasmatics, which are very popular, and fireworks display around 9, 10-ish. We get complaints sometimes when it doesn't go right off on time. I wanted to take a moment to thank our CEDC members, the Friendswood Rotary, Friends of Downtown Friendswood Association, the Chamber of Commerce, Galveston County Small Business Development Center, and as well our council liaison, Councilmember Branson. Small Business Week was the last week in April, and there were a number of activities throughout town that afforded folks the opportunity to engage experts in the community, learn about local businesses and opportunities that exist out there, and basically support these businesses that are the backbone of our community. So thank you all for your efforts. I already hear you're talking about next year's planning. I want to thank Waste Connections. As they do every year, they've highlighted 3 students at Friendswood High School, Clearbrook, and Clear Springs to receive a scholarship from Waste Connections to further their education after they leave Friendswood. In Friendswood High School, Julia Howding will pursue a psychology degree at the University of North Texas. Claudia Palacios will pursue an engineering degree at Texas A&M University. And Anna Trinosky will pursue a human development and family science at Texas Tech University. Unfortunately, none of them wanted to go to the best school ever, University of Houston, but I'm sorry. Go Cougs. Lastly, you heard the board chairman, Diane Freeman, gave the library annual report. We are in the summer months, and we're kicking off the Summer Reading Challenge. It is for all ages, so adults are welcome and encouraged to participate. It will run from June 1st to August 10th. You register on the Bean Stack through the library's website, and that's a program in their at the library. And you can claim prizes throughout the summer as you complete certain milestones in your reading. And I always encourage folks to read at least 2 or 3 books throughout the summer. It was mentioned earlier tonight, the city of Friendswood had received a $4.63 million allocation through the CDBG mitigation grant program. It's a U.S. Housing and Urban Development Program. It's going to do some improvements in the Analia subdivision. So Virginia Lane and Ella Court will be improved. The roadway will be totally reconstructed. Water lines will be replaced, and storm sewer lines will be upgraded. And then in Sun Meadow, there's a 500,000 gallon ground storage tank at Water Plant 4 that will be replaced. It's desperately in need of replacement. And with that, that's my report, unless y'all have any questions.
Thanks, Murad. Moving on to item 12, 12A, consider authorizing the city manager to negotiate and execute a funding authorization with the Gulf Coast Authority for the Blackhawk Regional Wastewater Treatment Facility Aeration Improvements Project.
Motion approved. Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion, any questions? All in favor? Item 13, proposed ordinances and resolutions. 13A, consider an ordinance amending the city's general budget for fiscal year 2023-2024 by approving Budget Amendment 7 and providing for supplemental appropriation and/or transfer of certain funds.
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor? Item 14, consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
It was me.
All right, we're adjourned. Man, that was a long meeting.
Good comments.
Thank you.
Good job.